Honored to welcome all speakers and participants at the National Conference on Traditional and Non-Traditional Security Imperatives for Pakistan, organized by Department of International Relations, University of Karachi, in collaboration with Center for International Strategic Studies, Sindh. Before we commence any further, I would request Qari Obais Khan, he is a student of BS, Department of International Relations, University of Karachi, to recite a few verses from Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ قال إبراهيم رب اجعل هذا البلد آمنا واجنبني وبني أن نعبد الأصنام رب إنهن أضللن كثيرا من الناس فمن تبعني فإنه مني ومن عصاني فإنك غفور رحيم ربنا إني أسكنت من ذريتي بواد غير ذي زرع عند بيتك المحرم ربنا ليقيموا الصلاة فاجعل أفئدة من الناس تهوي إليهم وارزقهم من الثمرات لعلهم يشكرون ربنا إنك تعلم ما نخفي وما نعلن وما يخفى على الله من شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء صدق الله العظيم। और याद करो वो वक्त जब इब्राहीम अलैहिस्सलाम ने अल्लाह ताला से दुआ करते हुए कहा था कि ए मेरे रब, इस शहर को पुरअमन बना दीजिए और मुझे और मेरे बेटों को इस बात से बचाइए कि हम बुतों की परस्तश करें। मेरे परवरदिगार, इन बुतों ने लोगों की बड़ी तादाद को गुमराह किया है, लिहाजा जो लोग मेरी राह पर चले वो तो मेरा है और जो मेरा कहना न माने तो उसका मामला मैं आप पर छोड़ता हूँ। आप बहुत बख्शने वाले बड़े मेहरबान हैं। ए हमारे परवरदिगार, मैंने अपनी कुछ औलाद को आपके हुर्मत वाले घर के पास एक ऐसी वादी में ला बसाया है जिसमें कोई खेती नहीं होती। हमारे परवरदिगार, ये मैंने इसलिए किया ताकि ये नमाज कायम करे, लिहाजा लोगों के दिलों में उनके लिए कशिश पैदा कर दीजिए और इनको फलों का रिज़्क़ अता फरमाइए ताकि वो शुक्र गुजार बने। ए हमारे रब, हम जो काम चुप करते हैं वो भी आपके इल्म में है और जो काम अलानिया करते हैं वो भी आपके इल्म में है। और अल्लाह से न जमीन का कोई चीज छुपी हुई है और न आसमान की कोई चीज छुपी हुई है। थैंक यू।
Sadaqallahul Azim. Ladies and gentlemen, I would request all please rise for the national anthem of Pakistan. Khudai Zul Jalal. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased and honored to have representatives from academia, including representatives from DHS Sufa University, Allama Iqbal Open University, Federal Urdu University of Arts, Sciences and Technology, and University of Sindh, Jamshoro. I also welcome representatives from think tanks, government institutions, and media. Ladies and gentlemen, proceedings of the conference are divided into two sessions. First is the working session, which has already commenced and will be chaired by Executive Director, Center for International Strategic Studies, Sindh, Ambassador Retired Qazi M. Khalilullah. I welcome you, sir. While the special session will be hosted by Chairperson, Department of International Relations, University of Karachi, Professor Dr. CISSS Tabassum. I welcome you, ma'am. Before we proceed further, I would like to mention here that this is an open house activity that will be reported in media. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the paucity of time, profiles of these speakers will not be read out. The same are given in the conference booklet available with you. Now, I would like to invite Executive Director, Center for International Strategic Studies, Sindh, Ambassador Retired Qazi M. Khalilullah for chair's opening remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Professor Dr. CISSS Tabassum, Chairperson, IR Department, University of Karachi, Honorable Speakers and members of Advisory Board of CISSS, dear guests, students, ladies and gentlemen. It's a matter of honor and pleasure for me to chair the working session of National Conference on Traditional and Non-Traditional Security Imperatives for Pakistan. Let me begin by underscoring that promoting peace in the region and beyond has always been Pakistan's priority. Exit of foreign forces from Afghanistan in 2021 under an agreement facilitated by Pakistan is a case in point. Pakistan supports resolution of all disputes peacefully through dialogue. Pakistan welcomed the normalization of diplomatic relations between the two brotherly countries, Saudi Arabia and Iran, facilitated by China recently. Let me recall that the leadership of Pakistan had also made efforts a few years ago to bridge gaps between the two brotherly countries. However, Pakistan has the capability as well as the will to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity against any external aggression. This resolve was once again demonstrated by the success of Pakistan Air Force Operation Swift Retort on 27 February 2019 in response to Indian attack on Balakot a day earlier. India's unwillingness to resolve outstanding disputes with Pakistan peacefully through dialogue and unilateral action of revoking the special status of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir through constitutional changes on 5 August 2019 have complicated the security situation in the region and heightened security concerns of both Pakistan and China. Both the countries have rejected Indian illegal actions of 5 August 2019. Great power rivalry and competition, unconditional Western support to India in pursuance of their mission to contain China, India's pursuit of advanced military hardware from its strategic partners, groupings like AUKUS and Quad, and assigning role of net security provider to India under the US-India Pacific strategy have adversely affected South Asian strategic stability. Unfortunately, unilateral focus of Western countries on their own perceived adversaries and turning a blind eye to dangerous developments in South Asia has emboldened our eastern neighbor to indulge in misadventures against its two nuclear neighbors and catapulting a nuclear-capable missile on Pakistan. Although India has refrained from staging any false flag operations since Pulwama to attempt another misadventure against Pakistan, Pakistan is concerned about implications of rising Hindu nationalism, religious extremism, and human rights abuses in India for the region. We also have to take appropriate countermeasures against New Delhi's counterforce temptations against Pakistan. Maintaining full spectrum deterrence for Israeli stability in the region is therefore a security imperative for Pakistan. Over time, traditional security imperatives have been compounded by emerging non-traditional security challenges, including economic, social, cyber, environmental, and human security. However, Pakistan has successfully dealt with many such challenges, in particular terrorism, but we suffered very heavy human and material losses while dealing with this menace, which has resurfaced recently. Pakistan is amongst the countries worst hit by climate-induced disasters, including floods. Monsoon rains last year had affected more than 33 million people and caused losses of about $30 billion. At the global level, Pakistan has recently achieved two successes in the context of global climate change. Number one, Pakistan played a leading role at COP27 held in Egypt last year for the establishment of Loss and Damage Fund to support countries most affected by climate disasters. And number two, Pakistan secured pledges of more than $9 billion from international community and global financial institutions last year at the Donors Conference held in Geneva for the affectees of recent disaster. Ladies and gentlemen, emerging technologies have immense constructive as well as destructive power. In 2017, the incumbent Russian president, on the occasion of launching Russian national AI strategy, said that the nation that leads in AI will rule the world in future. Since then, a large number of countries have adopted their national strategies on artificial intelligence. Pakistan, however, is lagging behind in this regard. Developments in AI, blockchain technology, and 3D printing have improved efficiency of industries including healthcare, transportation, and agriculture. It is estimated that AI would contribute more than $20 trillion to the global economy by 2030. Emerging technologies can also be used for disruption, hybrid warfare, disabling critical infrastructure, stealing sensitive information, misinformation, and propaganda. We all know that Pakistan is facing a number of economic and social challenges. To address some of these challenges, Pakistan has successfully used nuclear technology in a number of fields, including energy, healthcare, agriculture, and industry. Pakistan produces about 3,500 megawatt electricity from its 6 operational nuclear power plants, which is about 12% of total electricity generated in Pakistan. In terms of production costs, nuclear energy is cheapest after hydroelectric power. Nuclear energy is reliable and environment friendly. Pakistan can substantially reduce its energy import bill of about $27 billion a year by investing in new nuclear power plants to increase the share of nuclear energy in the energy mix. use of nuclear technology in Pakistan has been helpful in making progress for achieving 11 out of 17 Sustainable Development Goals. To advance its economic interests, Pakistan, while pursuing CPAC projects, can leverage its strategic location to promote connectivity with Central Asian states through Afghanistan for shared progress and development. In conclusion, let me say that keeping in view the myriad challenges Pakistan faces today, it is imperative to address traditional and non-traditional security challenges in a comprehensive manner. Our national power potential must be built without getting drawn into the great power competition. Security frameworks must consider the integrated nature of economic and military domain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Kazi. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Professor Dr. CISSS, Chairperson, Department of International Relations, University of Karachi, to present brief of the conference. Over to you, ma'am.
نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Ambassador Qadi Fadilullah Sahab, speakers of the conference, dignitaries from city, students and faculty members, Assalamu alaikum and very warm welcome. On behalf of International Relations Department, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all at this one-day national conference, which is we are organizing in collaboration with the Center for Strategic International Studies, Sindh. The conference idea was in my mind for quite a long time, and when I discussed it with the people from CISSS, they had actually materialized it. And I must thank General Qudwai here and appreciate all his spontaneous responses at all times. And at one time I was really disheartened to arrange this program, but he continuously supported and encouraged to manage the program, and in fact at many occasions he has actually coordinated. So and also along with that I'm also thankful to the CISSS staff who has been very cooperative in arranging the entire program activity. The theme of the conference, as I have said, that I have already I have been teaching this course for the last many years to the MPhil program, that is the International Security Studies. So it's the core area and principle of policy of many nations, states. The security studies is the center of research and studies, both for the students of international relations and of other subjects. One of the famous writer, Barry Busin, he said that security is taken to be about the pursuit of freedom from threat, the ability of states and societies to maintain their interdependent identity and their functional integrity against forces of change, which they see as hostile. The bottom line of security is survival, but it is reasonably includes a substantial range of concerns about the condition of existence. To effectively deal with such threats, nations not only seek power, economic, political, and military, and take adequate measures either to ward them off or minimize their perceived adverse impact, but efforts are also directed to acquire more and more power. Students of international relations are very, very much aware of the debate between realists and idealists. I am not advocating any of the school of thought, but just to quote one saying of a founder of Pakistan, Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He said, "The weak and defenseless in this imperfect world invites aggression from others." So it ultimately defines that power is the center of all activities and international politics in any manner. I am sure that this conference will explore new avenues for the students, gives detailed insight of different challenges which Pakistan is facing, Dr. Qazi Saab has already explained the different dimension of the security, both traditional and non-traditional. So I'll not go into the detail of traditional and non-traditional security imperative which are now being faced by Pakistan. In the last, I must say that I'm also thankful to the Vice Chancellor, University of Karachi, who have been very cooperative in arranging this venue, and he had also been very cooperative in responding but to those challenges which I have faced from time to time in arranging this conference. And last but not the least, I must thank to the faculty, IR faculty, Dr. Naeem Ahmed, Dr. Nausheen, and precisely and specifically Amir Farooqi, Haris Ehsan, and Yasir Ali, who have been very cooperative and coordinating between Presidency, Sindh Police, Special Branch, the Department of International Relations, and CISSS. So my special thanks to the field which I have recently discovered, and I'm also thankful to all those participants who have come all the way from different parts of the city, Balochistan, Islamabad, interior Sindh, and also from Karachi. I hope this conference would be a success and a landmark in our relationship with CISSS. And I hope that we will have future relationship, future cooperation with this organization. I'm thanking to you all and welcome to this conference. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shaista Tabassum, Chairperson, Department of International Relations, University of Karachi. Now, I would request all the guest speakers of the working session, please come forward to the stage. I would request keynote speaker, Brigadier Aga Ahmed Gul, Consultant Coordinator, Balochistan Think Tank Network, to please come forward on the stage. Ambassador Zamir Akram retired, Professor Dr. Zafar Nawaz Respal, Professor Dr. Yasir Ayaz, and Professor Dr. Shahida Wizarat, and Dr. Ansar Parvez. Now, I would request Ambassador Qazi to please steer further proceeding of today's conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you for inviting me to chair the session from here on. Let me also welcome all the speakers who have taken time to be with us. And we will begin with the keynote address by Brigadier Aga Gul Ahmed, retired, who is founder and consultant coordinator of Balochistan Think Tank Network. Brigadier Aga Gul Ahmed.
Can you all hear? Can you all hear my voice with this? Ambassador Qazi Khalilullah, Dr. Shaista Tabassum, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Today's conference apparently seems to be focused only on security imperatives. But actually it covers every aspect of our national life. The basic responsibility of every sovereign state is to ensure security and well-being of its people. Security and well-being, by the way, go hand in hand. They cannot be segregated. The state of being secure is not only security against external threats, but also from poverty, hunger, and state of being free from danger of any type or threat, external as well as internal. National security is not military oriented only. It also has non-military dimensions, including the security from terrorism, militancy, crime, economic security, food security, energy security, and environmental security. Governments rely on a range of measures, including political, economic, and military power, as well as diplomacy, to safeguard the security of a nation state. Security is also built regionally and internationally by reducing transnational causes of insecurity. These then are some of the topics on which our distinguished guest will be speaking today. I shall briefly touch upon some of them just to put the perspective right. I shall talk about the peculiarities of Pakistan's emergence, say a few words about Pakistan's geopolitical environment, the nuclear paradigm existing in South Asia, and non-traditional security challenges covering hybrid and economic challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, some of our challenges indeed started with the creation of Pakistan some 75 years ago. Unless we take stock of them, we will not be able to evaluate what a tremendous struggle it has been to be where we are today in spite of the powerful adversaries. The British did not want to create Pakistan. Now, whether it was their reversion to political Islam re-emerging after they had snuffed out the Ottoman Empire, or it was their reversion to resurrect Muslim rulers whom the East India Company had dethroned through battles spread over 200 years. You may not be knowing this, but let me tell you, in 200 years, except for one battle that the British fought with the Marathas and Sikhs together, all their battles were 100% against You will forgive me for sipping water time and again. The old Frank Corona is roaming around again, and I think it has affected my throat. But don't run away, you are not going to get done. You are sitting too far away. Now, the British Parliament had given a clear mandate in February 1947 to Viceroy Lord Mountbatten to give independence to British India by August 1948. Unfortunately, on 3rd March 1947, he announces that after 70 days, the partition would take place. This criminal haste was meant to fail the unprepared new state. In brazen violation of the partition rule, he landed Indian Army in Srinagar by air in the autumn of 1947, while forbidding General Gracie, the Commander-in-Chief of Pakistan Army, to send troops to contest this illegal Indian occupation. A territorial dispute between India and Pakistan was thus created right from the time of independence. And also I like to point out that there are 5 rivers of Pakistan which actually belong from Kashmir. Then India's military action in East Pakistan in 1971 and occupying undefended Sindh Glacier in 1984 forced Pakistan Army to occupy virtually every inch of the line of control. India tested a nuclear device in 1974, forcing Pakistan to also seek nuclear weapons capability. As you all know, against nuclear weapons threats, a non-nuclear state has no defense rating. In 1998, to counter India's nuclear test, Pakistan also tested its nuclear weapons. While the US did not condemn the Indian nuclear test, it was quick to condemn Pakistani test and remains averse to Pakistan's nuclear capability. I may also share with you that 70% of Indian Army and air bases are all adjacent to Pakistani eastern border, and they keep threatening that they will overrun Pakistan and create Akhand Bharat, meaning big Bharat that includes their mythical rule of Hindus from Burma to Pakistan. And interestingly, Pakistan also has a territorial claim on Pakistan. Consequently, Pakistan has become a security-centric state, quite obviously at the cost of socio-economic development. And this situation is not likely to change anytime soon. Yet another serious handicap was that Sindh, Punjab, KP, and Karachi and British Gurkha were not only called the frontiers of the British India, they were actually treated like the frontiers. This area that became at that time West Pakistan was the backwaters of British India. I think at this time I should share with you a few introductory words about Balochistan. In 1947, by the way, in 1947 there were two Balochistan. The northern Balochistan, for ease of reference, was called British Balochistan. Balochistan that was raised by the British, and the southern Balochistan was called Karachi Balochistan, and it was created in 1730 by Nader Shah Kaka, the Persian. From 1948, when Karachi Balochistan acceded to Pakistan, till 1956, because there was no constitution, initially the Qaid-e-Azam and later on the following governors allowed the Khan of Kalat, Mir Ahmed Yar Khan, to be the ruler, except that they changed the name. Instead of Karachi Balochistan, it was given the name of Balochistan States Union. And that Balochistan States Union continued under a tribal culture and rule as it was before partition. However, after 1956, during one unit, Karachi Balochistan and British Balochistan became administrative divisions called Quetta Division and Kalat Division. It was only in 1970 that both the divisions were merged together at the end of one unit, and province of Balochistan with its present day dimensions were created for the first time in history. If you calculate, the other three provinces were through conquest were created by the British in 1843, Sindh, Punjab and Punjab. So Balochistan straight away is 127 years behind the rest of the country. It's a semi-desert. Most of it is out of monsoon range and gets very little rains during the year. Now, because there is no water, there are no rivers. So the productivity of this huge, expensive, vast land, which is 43% of Pakistan, is very minimal. Amongst the provincial contribution to the federal revenue, Balochistan share last year, unfortunately, was only 1.67%. That should tell you how poor Balochistan is. I'd like to say a few words about geopolitics. Would you please lower your volume? Geopolitically, Pakistan is located in the best of the geography and in the worst of the geography, in Eurasia. I'll explain this. In 1725, Peter the Great said, and I quote, "We must access warm waters." Now, if you draw a line from St. Petersburg to Indian Ocean, the shortest route of this line comes to Pakistani coasts. The China Economic Pakistan Economic Corridor enables China to bypass Malacca Strait, hugely reduce the distances to global markets, and have access to open sea at the border of global maritime commerce. Russia and the Central Asian states would also have this access. But then it goes against the China containment policy of the United States. India claims this corridor passes through the disputed territory, which Pakistan considers its legitimate part. Iran and Gulf states also are not terribly happy about this because they see a rival seaport coming up, which is located geographically better than any of the seaports that Iran or UAE has. Pakistan is therefore grappling with competing demands of major powers, all threatening its security. Being located in this, if I may call it, geopolitical crush zone is a pain, yet it is a great opportunity if we can manage it. I'm very happy to say that our diplomats have so far done a tremendous job of managing it. I have no doubt they will continue to manage it even now. Talking about nuclear paradigm in South Asia, India has been a nuclear power since 1974. However, the statements coming from India regarding employment of nuclear weapons are often very cavalier and irresponsible. India is 7 times bigger than Pakistan and has a clear edge in conventional forces. One would expect Indian military to be highly professional, and its top commanders and politicians would speak responsibly. Indian Army chiefs, not one, several of them, visiting occupied Kashmir have made it almost a ritual to say that they can fight a limited nuclear war, as they say, under nuclear threshold of Pakistan. That is, Pakistan will not go nuclear and capture Pakistani Kashmir. They have also said it a few times, we do not rule out first strike option. These are all very dangerous statements, and the ones to whom they have directed cannot remain oblivious to that. One wonders if the public in India really understands what their leaders keep reiterating. Nuclear weapons are not just bigger bombs. They are altogether different category of violence unleashing multiple lethal destructive forces having regional and then global strategic effects. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan has the capability and the will to retaliate in kind should India use nuclear weapons. And India should not assume Pakistan's nuclear response. Being a smaller country, actually Pakistan has no other response but to go nuclear should it feel that the defeat is imminent. A nuclear exchange with India will be for sure a mutually assured destruction, which we hope that Indian public understands. There is no such thing as limited nuclear war or counterforce options only. Given our geographical proximity, escalation ladder of nuclear exchange will be rapid, within hours if not within minutes. No country has so far fought a nuclear battle, and India and Pakistan should not go down in history as the first wise nations who tried it and vanished from planet Earth. With that, I come to the end of my brief introduction to today's conference. I thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your very comprehensive address. We couldn't agree more that it is the basic responsibility of a state to ensure security and well-being of every citizen. Thank you for explaining the concept of comprehensive security. I just want to make a brief request to all the speakers that we have to hand over this auditorium to the security for the special session where we will have high level chief guests to kindly finish their presentations within 15 to 20 minutes. 20 minutes is the maximum time, and I hope that this will be observed. Our next speaker is Ambassador Diet Zamir Akram. He is a former permanent representative to the UN in Geneva and currently advisor to the Studies Plan Division. He will speak on Pakistan's contribution to promoting regional and global peace and security. Over to you, sir.
It gives me great pleasure to be here at the University of Karachi. I graduated from my master's in 1977 and went on from here to Pakistan. It's a pleasure for me to be back in this university and in this department that I studied for almost 3 years, my bachelor's and my master's. I'm grateful to the Center for International Studies and Karachi University to invite me to speak on this, in this conference. And as you know, as you've heard, my subject is Pakistan's contribution to promoting regional and global peace and security. So, to give a brief overview, Pakistan, since its independence, as you just heard from the keynote speaker, has confronted a environment of extreme security challenges ever since its independence. And in order to meet those challenges, one of the key foreign policy options for Pakistan from the beginning was to rely on international principles such as those that are reflected in the United Nations Charter, calling for calling for an international order based on peace and security through rules requiring peaceful settlement of disputes and observance of principles of international law. And this was geared primarily from the very beginning towards the principles because of the conflict that emerged and the dispute that emerged with India over Jammu and Kashmir. So, from the very beginning, the issues of self-determination and freedom became the keystone of the pursuit of Pakistan's foreign policy, not just in the context of the Kashmir dispute, but also in the context of the Palestinian issue that was prevalent at the same time in the United Nations agenda. At that time, it was also important for Pakistan to support movements as its own for freedom and support for decolonization of countries that had been colonized by the major powers like the British, the French, the Germans, and others all over the world, particularly in Asia and Africa. And so, decolonization based on self-determination and equitable development as well as peaceful settlement of disputes were the underlying principles that guided Pakistan's approach towards international politics in those days. And you may not know this, but in many cases of freedom movements, such as the freedom movements of the North African countries, the Moroccans, the Algerians, and the Tunisians, Pakistan played a proactive role. In fact, many of the leaders of these countries, which were under French occupation, were provided with Pakistani passports and given Pakistani nationality, in fact, to be able to pursue their freedom struggle at the international level. So this was one of the examples. Another very important example was the support that was given by Pakistan to the independence movement of Indonesia against the Dutch. So these were key examples, and then of course later on also in Africa with the support of the South Africans, to Mozambique, to Angola, and several other countries that were struggling against colonialism during that period. Pakistan has also been one of the largest contributors to UN peacekeeping historically. At times, it has been the highest contributor of UN peacekeeping, and it has still, I think, several thousand troops deployed across the world, from Haiti to Africa, where Pakistani soldiers are performing peacekeeping duties. Pakistan played a key role in the rapprochement between China and the United States at the end of the Vietnam War. And you know that this was a policy of trying to bridge the two countries with which Pakistan maintained close relations. The United States and China were two countries that we maintained close relations, despite the fact that there were deep-rooted differences between these countries. And the fact that this was done successfully is a tribute to the foreign policy establishment of Pakistan and the way that they managed this relationship, and eventually then were in a position to facilitate a rapprochement between these countries at their request. Similarly, in 1979, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and Pakistan was virtually for the first year or so in an isolated state where it was confronted by a security threat by the Soviet Red Army on its western front and the allied Indian Army on its eastern front. Pakistan withstood that kind of pressure and supported the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Afghanistan by supporting the Afghan Mujahideen in order to fight back. It was only a year or so later that the US-led international community effort started to help the Afghans fight against the Soviet Union, and eventually, when the time came, it was Pakistan-led effort through the Geneva process, the proximity talks in Geneva, that led to the withdrawal of Soviet forces, that led to the re-establishment or the return towards ending the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. And then during that entire period, and including up to now, Pakistan has provided refuge, shelter to more than, at that time in the beginning, around 4 million, and now around about 3 million Afghan refugees who continue to seek shelter within Pakistan. From 2001 to virtually 2021, almost 20 years, Pakistan was also the so-called frontline state against the war on terror. And in this process, for the longest time, ever since actually the American invasion of Afghanistan took place, Pakistan has argued that there had to be a difference in the war against terror, against Al Qaeda and other terrorist organizations, and in the treatment and outreach towards the Afghan Taliban and treating them together without distinction was a mistake. Eventually, after 20 years, the US recognized this difference and the rest, as you know, led to the agreement between them and the Taliban and their withdrawal. Even today, in this world of great power rivalry, Pakistan is trying to play a role which is constructive. It seeks to have balanced relations with all the major powers, and it also advocates that instead of a confrontational relationship between the United States of China or United States of Russia, the three major powers should actually resolve their differences and accept their mutual interests and work out an international environment which is based on security and mutual compromise. Now, let me say a few words in the area where I have worked, and that is related with regard to weapons of mass destruction and how in this very critical area Pakistan has played a significant role. And when we are talking of weapons of mass destruction, we are basically talking about chemical weapons, biological weapons, and nuclear weapons. So Pakistan has been the founding member of the Biological Weapons Convention and the Chemical Weapons Convention. It has, since its independence, advocated nuclear disarmament and the peaceful uses of nuclear technology. However, it was due to India's great power ambitions which led to the Indian nuclear test of 1974 and changed the nuclear dynamics in South Asia, forcing Pakistan to pursue its own nuclear program. But what is less known are the efforts that Pakistan made after the Indian nuclear test to actually avoid the nuclearization of South Asia and the proliferation of the nuclear proliferation in South Asia. Now let me outline to you very briefly what those initiatives were. First, to declare South Asia as a nuclear weapon-free zone, to accept the Indian Ocean as a zone of peace, to promote the idea that nuclear weapon states would provide negative security guarantees to non-nuclear weapon states, means that nuclear weapon states would not attack states that do not have nuclear weapons with nuclear weapons. It proposed a joint Pakistan-India declaration renouncing nuclear weapons in 1978. It called for mutual inspections of each other's nuclear facilities in 1979. It called for simultaneous adherence to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, again also in 1979. The simultaneous acceptance of full-scope safeguards of the International Atomic Energy Agency. It proposed a no-war pact with India in 1981, or a bilateral or regional nuclear test ban treaty in 1988. One of the efforts succeeded, and that was agreement on non-attack on nuclear facilities. And this succeeded only because by that time, 1989, Pakistan had made sufficient progress in developing its own nuclear weapons capability, although it had not conducted a hot test as the 1974 Indian test, but it certainly had the capability and the Indians knew it. And that is when nuclear deterrence actually came into being. And so this one agreement on non-attack on nuclear facilities took place. Despite that, Pakistan proposed a 5-nation nuclear conference to prevent the nuclearization of South Asia. It proposed a zero missile zone between the two countries in this region. And even after the 1998 nuclear tests, Pakistan proposed a strategic restraint regime which would reject the development of destabilizing capabilities such as anti-ballistic missile systems or submarine non-ballistic missile systems, which, of course, because the Indians did not accept this idea of a strategic restraint regime, are a reality today. At the international level, this is something that we have done at the regional level, but at the international level as well. In 2015, for instance, Pakistan proposed a fissile material cut-off treaty. It also proposed both India and Pakistan should join and sign the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. And then, among the other international level measures that we have taken, these include adoption of national legislation within the country for nuclear safety and security. The Pakistan Nuclear Regulatory Authority, the Strategic Export Control Division, the Pakistan Center of Excellence for Nuclear Security, which incidentally has been termed as a gold standard by one of the Director Generals of the IAEA and as world class by the latest during the latest visit by the Director General of the IAEA. Pakistan also plays a key role in the 1540 Committee, which is aimed at ensuring nuclear safety and security. It has played a major role, for instance, in the Nuclear Security Summit process that was launched by President Obama in 2010. And in terms of our international cooperation with regard to civilian nuclear uses, as I said, we have extended cooperation under IAEA for nuclear safety and security to the international community. We are developing capabilities domestically and sharing those capabilities with the international community through the IAEA in the use of nuclear medicine and the use of nuclear technologies in agriculture. We have been a major, and this is a matter of pride for me personally because this happened while I was the permanent representative to the UN in Geneva, where the Center for Nuclear Research, European Center for Nuclear Research is based, CERN. And what is a matter of personal pride to me is that we have been as one of the first non-Asian countries to be accepted as an associate member of CERN because of our work in the construction and operation of the Hadron Collider. I don't know if you know what the Hadron Collider is, but it is basically a circular tube that goes for 14 kilometers underground, and the purpose of it is to recreate the Big Bang and to measure what happens after the Big Bang. And the Higgs boson particle that was discovered about 2 years ago, something about which Dr. Abdul Salam had theorized in his theoretical work, had talked about, was actually discovered as a result in this Hadron Collider, and Pakistan has the privilege of having played a part in that role. So I want to end here because my time is up. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Zamir Akram, for highlighting various aspects of Pakistan's contribution to international peace and security. Thank you for mentioning that while conducting foreign policy, Pakistan relies on principles of the UN Charter and international law. However, many countries do not pay any heed to that. We often hear about from the Western countries about an international rules-based order that is very flexible. It does not apply to them, it does not apply to their allies, it only applies to their adversaries and to countries they want to put on the map. It certainly does not apply to our eastern neighbor, which is lynching Muslims, which is very badly treating its minorities with impunity. Our next speaker is Dr. and Professor Zafar Nawaz Jaspal. He is professor at the School of Politics and International Relations at Azam University. He will speak on India's counterforce temptations, impact on South Asian stability.
Great pleasure for me here to be guest of the Department of International Relations. All the cabinet members are very good. At the same time, many of my students are working. So, having said this, within this, I mean that 10 to 15 to 20 minutes I try to cover on this topic. Indian counterforce temptation, impact on South Asian stability. It's an open secret that when we look about India, it continues to modernize. Okay, when we are looking about this, that India continues to modernize its nuclear weapons arsenal and operationalize its growing dry. That is its current status. It has been struggling to acquire a reliable counterforce capability. So we cannot underestimate this thing, that whether it is able or not, and as the topic suggests, temptation. So keeping in mind the topic, I identified three interlinked questions on the basis of which I try to present my case in front of you. How one can conceptualize counterforce capability. Conceptualization is very important in this context. Second is India developing counterforce capability? That how we judge it or qualify that whether India is developing or we are just assuming. Are there tangible facts available about it or developments on the basis of which you say that India is doing this? And third is, of course, what is the main demand of this topic, that what is the impact of counterforce on the South Asian stability? Having said this, let me start with this. My first point is the counterforce. When we look about the counterforce, we say the force or doctrine of counterforce is a part of a nuclear strategy, is the targeting of an opponent's military infrastructure with nuclear strike. Now here is a question that this definition which I am using, it has been taken from the Cold War nuclear strategic contest between the Russians and the Americans. But now we have to not forget, though I will stick with this definition, but we have to not ignore that we are living in the third nuclear age. So analysts are using this and saying that we are in the third nuclear age, and on the basis of that, when you look, for example, in the third nuclear age, how they distinguish it from the other. First one and second one is that In this age, there are many capabilities by which you can develop strategic, or what we call it, non-nuclear strategic weapons with the assistance of emerging technology. So in such a situation, or in these kind of things, even a conventional weapon integrated with the emerging technology, it has an impact of the counter force, if I can go with this third nuclear age discourse. But still, let's say how we are looking in the literature and the strategic community is using. So it poses a challenge to the nuclear war, which can be it posits that a nuclear war can be lifted and can be formed, and on this basis of this. Let me finish my time. So in this case, when we are looking this, we find that it contains that a nuclear war can be limited and can be fought and won. So the state which is developing the counter force within the nuclear domain, it is convinced that the war will remain limited, or that which later on you would find that the way India is saying that it is working for the what we call it escalation dominance, or a limited war, or these kind of things. So by this way, when we are looking about this counter force, generally we are seeing that counter force makes the use of some fraction of the nuclear force to attack a portion of the enemy's target system, consisting of military installations, logistical complexes, common these hard bunkers or missile silos. So these kind of the things, when we focus, we find that the counter force are going on, and it is basically targeting the war fighting capability of the adversary. Of course, if the state acquires the counter force capability, it gives the choice of time, target, and scale to the initiator, and will pay, and it gives it an advantage in the war. So having said this, when we look about this, my second point is that how we can go on the counter force and on these kind of things, why we say India is preparing, or if there is any logic. There are two things. One is that what is the intention which you can say, glean from India's military doctrine. There are many now available documents like 2017 Joint Forces Military Doctrine, or 2018, what they call it, this land warfare doctrine. So in this context, if we can focus on their doctrine and language, we find that they have an intention, they have a temptation or a desire for it. And second is that we qualify this sort of a thing with reference to their weapons acquisition or testing policy. So in this way, when we are looking, for example, how I can build this thing, if you see that the Indian military planners contemplated fighting a war against Pakistan under relative nuclear parity by acquiring escalation dominance capability after this disappointment of 2001-2002 military deployments. And since that time, they are working on this. And similarly, in the few years back, in 2017, when the Joint Services Military Doctrine was revealed, one can analyze it that this doctrine was grounded on a very important sort of a thing, grounded on the existence of counterforce weaponry in the arsenal. Similarly, when we look about this, why I'm saying grounded, before that, if you see that in the Indian literature or Indian strategic discourse or statements, there was very much emphasis on the limited war. Then we heard Cold Start Doctrine, or what we call it, proactive military operations strategy, and that evolved into finally surgical strike strategy. So this kind of the things, especially if you see that there was a paragraph in which they talk about surgical strike in 2017 doctrine. So it means it took them 15 years, 1.5 decades to reach that level. That's why I said that it was grounded, this doctrine was grounded on this. Similarly, you see from 2017 or especially 2016 onward, one can look at, we find that the Indian ruling elite is frequently signaling, interesting thing, that they are talking about first use, no first use option is no more available or advisable, we have to go for first use. So if you see all these statements are their defense ministers, you would find that, or if you review the literature on the Indian produced by the Indian strategic community, you would find that earlier they were too much talking about no first use of the nuclear weapon. Now they are very much signaling, practically saying that first use. And that is also leads us to third point, that where you can say doctrinal or this kind of thing, swapping their famous massive retaliation. When they say they are swapping with the massive retaliation with the flexible response strategy. So in this context, when we are looking massive retaliation with the flexible response, of course that qualifies that they need this kind of a capability, otherwise that cannot work. Now in this context, when we are seeing, if you see that India, if it stick with the escalation dominance concept, then India requires a seamless web of capabilities up and down on the scale of, on the escalation ladder to gain escalation dominance. India needs to credible ability to disarm Pakistan of its long-range nuclear weapon system to implement a strategy of escalation dominance, where India can then threaten credibly to escalate and defeat Pakistan at every potential level of violence. These factors indicate that India has been determined to procure or indigenously develop credible counterforce nuclear weapon, counterforce capability and nuclear weapons to decapitate the striking capability of its nuclear armed adversaries, especially Pakistan, and now they are looking after Gulwan, China as well. So this leads us to a second point, that if you can theoretically or you can say find that the literature is enough to prove that India has an adaptation, then where it is going or how much it has achieved. If you see India's weapon systems, in the case of weapon system, India is considering Agni-1 nuclear capable missile for a large, and if because of it, it is now in a position to be deployed or launched on warning or preemptive nuclear strike capability, or by this way they acquire the preemptive nuclear strike capability. The second important weapon in this domain is hypersonic cruise missile and hypervelocity glides projectiles. So, and that link with the emerging technologies because of precision and fastness, and you can say targeting capability. The third important in this case could be the weapon multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles. India has been developing, they call it K-5 from Kalam K, and its range could be 6,000 to 10,000. That's why I said that they are also keeping in mind China now in their sort of thing. Then you would find at the battlefield level tactical ballistic weapons. There are two in this. Prahar, which has a salvo fire 6 missiles capability, range 60 to 120 kilometers, and Prakati range 60 to 170 kilometers. And besides it, though these weapons are not considered as a part of a counterforce by definition, but these weapons could be considered as a prerequisite for a counterforce strategy, that is air and missile defense systems. So if you focus on the air and missile defense systems, what you find that they are generally associated with the nuclear weapons in the nuclear, you can say, strategic literature, because they are the supporting mechanism, but it also changes the existing deterrence, which is based on, you can say, vulnerabilities, preserving the vulnerabilities on the both sides. So if you have a missile defense system, then definitely it created trouble and changed this equation. In this context, of course, everyone knows that India has been investing too much in the development or modernization of anti-ballistic missile defense system. It sometimes makes claims about it. Of course, the workability of missile defense system is debatable. Even Americans failed to achieve any breakthrough in this field despite their billions of dollars investment. But still, if India has been investing since decades in this field, definitely they have some kind of a thinking, because even weapon works or not, but if you purchase it, it brings a confidence. It has a psychological impact on the makers of the strategy and the users, especially the politicians. If you have studied this technical level of a strategy debate, you will find that how politicians are influenced or make decisions. So in this context, when we say, the general impression is that maybe India is technologically backward and it would be not in a position to do this, but we have to not forget that, as I said, that with these sort of things, that India is also working on the emerging technologies, and everyone is aware that, if I'm not wrong, on May 24 or 26, 2022, there was in a summit between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi, where President Biden or the White House announced that the United States agreed to share artificial intelligence or the others related of space technologies with India. So it is very much documented, and similarly, on 30th January 2023, the American Defense Advisor and the National Security Advisor and the Indian National Security Advisor, they had a meeting on this, and which they claimed that we have to go further for the implementation of that understanding between the two states. So by this way, if you see that if they are bringing the new emerging technologies in the or the Americans are assisting them, definitely it will be going to give India a capability which we find it a preemptive counterforce option or a capability. So operationalization of offensive missiles like hypersonic cruise missiles, crystallized Agni or MIRVs, coupled with air and missile defense systems, enable India to launch first strike that use multiple warheads to target Pakistan's nuclear arsenal, and then rely on BMD to intercept any residual assets which survive the disarming strike attempt. So this is a scenario which I just read in front of you. So it created alarming situation that counterforce brings closer to the use of nuclear weapons. The strategic rival might initially react by planning to launch rival, I mean Pakistan, its threatened missiles on warning and placing missiles on warning, or even use them preemptively. So you have three possibilities in such a scenario. First possibility is accident, second is miscalculations, and third is desperation. So in such a situation, naturally, what is the biggest casualty? The biggest casualty of this kind of situation is, that strategic stability. So in this case, when we look about the strategic stability, it has its roots in the history of the Soviets and the Americans rivalry during the Cold War, and it was very much preserved on the mutual vulnerability emerged during the Cold War of the both sides, and this mutual vulnerability was a part of their, you can say, deterrent stability. If you see, that's the reason they signed 1972 ABM Treaty. So strategic stability also refers where deterrence is based, deterrent stability exists, and the states avoid to change the status quo, or they think that any initiative will be not going to give them a benefit. So in such a situation, when you have these kind of the developments from the one side, like a new generation of the missiles or an offensive and defensive missiles, what is the situation comes? This development, such a development, or the development of counterforce, which is if we can just simply use the capability, it stimulates an arms race, it stimulates security dilemma, it also stimulates stability and instability paradox, and at the same time persistent strategic competition between India and Pakistan. Theoretically and practically, all these four factors, they are averse or tied to the deterrent stability, or I can say strategic stability. So in such a situation, when you introduce the counterforce, definitely it germinates or it leads to us a situation where the strategic stability in South Asia would be transformed into strategic instability. Similarly, it also caused the deterrence riddle, because of the reason is that the deterrence riddle in South Asia is intensified because India is taking a lead in introducing new kinds of the missiles, which is also disturbing the current delicate balance in South Asia. And if there is a disturbance of a balance of terror or a balance of power, where the balance will be shifted, indicators are that the balance of power may shift in India's favor. And if the Modi is there, he will not going to waste a minute to, you can say, benefit from that balance of power, which will be a imbalance which will be in his favor. Why I'm saying that in such a situation, when you focus, you find that the counterforce potential encourages launching a decapitating nuclear first strike. The fear of first strike becomes more plausible if the chairman of the National Command Authority or head of the government, which is normally in India is head of the government, is ideologically extremist and habitual in using war rhetoric and sporadic violence as a mean to muster popular support to win the election. That is why also here fear that next year, 2024, April, May is again general election months of the India. So we have to be very watchful that maybe such kind of attempt made like a 2016 to win the UP in 2017 election, 2019 to win the general election. So how we can ignore? So in a conclusion, I can submit that the Indian and Pakistani military build-up creates an enormous spiral in the offensive and defensive arms race, entailing a strategic environment which is immensely complex, volatile, and unpredictable. My point here is, India's counterforce temptation has the potential to destabilize South Asian strategic stability. And my final submission is, to counter the perceived Indian nuclear threat, Pakistan needs to continuously review its nuclear capability and readjust its nuclear posture to make it more reliable and flexible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jaspal, for sharing your thoughts on a very important subject that is directly related to Pakistan's traditional security imperatives. Our next speaker is Professor Dr. Yasser Ayaz, who is Chairman of National Center for Artificial Intelligence, NUST, Islamabad. He will speak on emerging technologies and hybrid warfare, challenges and opportunities for Pakistan.
Assalamualaikum. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me here. It's an honor to speak before you, such an august forum. So the topic that I have today certainly falls within the realm of the non-traditional, security imperatives of Pakistan. And in the non-traditional realm of the security imperatives, what we know by now is that war is it's not just armed conflict. War is always going on, because it's narrative building, it's cyber security, then it leads to some sort of military conflict, if it ever leads to that, God forbid. So, and what are the new challenges, how things are evolving, how things are emerging, and what to expect in the coming years in the evolving scenario of the security regime. So, I've already been introduced. So, I headed the Department of Robotics and Artificial Intelligence at NUST for over 10 years, since 2010 to 2020. And my assignment since 2018 is more concerned with the National Center of Artificial Intelligence, which is a distributed setup. We have labs here in Karachi as well at the NUET. Also, some of the projects are funded in some other universities in Karachi, like EFT in FAST University and some others. And also we have presence in Lahore, Peshawar and Islamabad in different universities. So it's a kind of a network, in addition to just being, like an office that, develops products. It's also a network of Pakistani scientists, engineers, which are located in different parts of the country and trying to develop, various kinds of technology as, required by different organizations spread across the country. So some of my own research, I come from the background of robotics intelligence, right? So I've been working on humanoids and walking robots ever since my undergrad years. And I've developed robots, built them myself. I have in my years in Germany, in Japan later on, I've developed intelligence for robots. So, and also some of my projects, the ones on the left, especially you may have seen in the television sometimes, because we were the first team from South Asian region who actually made it to the top league of the International RoboCup competition, in which robots play autonomous soccer against each other without any human intervention. Like they have complete AI, built into them, and without even connecting to a cloud, with their limited intelligence inside the body of the robot, it must perceive where it is right now in the football field, and plan its motion accordingly and score goals and plan to win, as a team as well. So this is the highest level of the robotics-based intelligence, and the reason why it is so is that it emulates strategies in which, for example, independent units having some sort of intelligence must make autonomous decisions on their own, on the fly, in real time, and coordinate with each other with limited communication capabilities in order to achieve an objective. I'm sure you can all relate to, what, this actually entails. And there are several other things like, for example, rehabilitation related stuff and, technologies that directly benefit the industry, like, these soft drafting capabilities. And we've won a number of international awards in Australia, in London, etc., based on our research. So coming from that background and then heading to artificial intelligence, like we are a more applied department which develops technology, but we also have, our eye on the, strategic aspect, and we keep working on that. Now, looking at the overview of emerging technologies, this is Fortune Business Insights, actually, from which they have actually put together a recent article in which they've collected information from a lot of sources. And this actually tells us about, for example, how the security vulnerabilities are evolving, how the cybersecurity vulnerabilities are evolving, which other emerging technologies are considered important by the world, where the world is putting its money, and that gives us some idea about what to expect in the future. So if we look at the overview of emerging technologies and the list that has been put together by Service Innovation Lab and GitHub, on this, so you see that artificial intelligence is the single technology that is actually highlighted as the topmost here as well. And if you look at the numbers put together by Medium, what it shows is that 72% of the CIOs, the Chief Innovation Officers of the world technology companies right now, 72%, it's a big number, actually take artificial intelligence as the technology where they would like to put their money, because they think that this is where their money worth will come from. This is what will reward them, where the return will come from. Then is Internet of Things, 46%. And Internet of Things also, when we talk about that, of course, there's a network of sensors around you. They could be in the room, or if we're talking about war situation, it could be a network-centric warfare, for example, in which there are, of course, different, sensing machines, devices which are feeding information back to you. So even at the back of that, you have artificial intelligence. Then you have the robotics process automation, cloud-native development, etc., so on and so forth. So number of technologies in that zone. So artificial intelligence is highlighted as the top priority area by the CIOs of the major world technology companies, even as we speak. So Genpact predicts that by 2025, firms who have adopted artificial intelligence will be 10 times more efficient and have twice the market share than those who haven't, right? So a single statistic to actually, assert that point. then 86% of companies say that artificial intelligence will be a mainstream technology at their firms in 2021. This is PwC 2021, basically statistics coming from there, but this is far ahead of the initial predictions. Like I remember that there was a very famous article by Microsoft CEO and founder Bill Gates back in the year 2007 when he wrote the article titled "A Robot in Every Home," right? And he said that by 2025 you won't find a single home where you won't have at least one robot working. And at least in my home, like or many others, like there are so many automatic machines that you have. They may not look like humans or a human form of things or something, but they are intelligent automation. And intelligent automata is where artificial intelligence and robotics and all these technologies essentially come from. And this was also there in the prediction in 2007, which Bill Gates has made in his article, right? So, for this to come ahead, what Bill Gates has written was by 2025 you won't find a home like that. And here we are already seeing that mainstream companies are saying that 86% of them will have the mainstream technologies AI by 2021. Then 63% of the executives believe that artificial intelligence initiatives are required to catch up with their competitors. This is Deloitte. 58% of firms increase their spending in artificial intelligence for workforce planning, right? So it's a long topic in itself, but even for human performance improvement, there is a lot of artificial intelligence that is actually applied, especially for critical fields like aviation, for example, where the pilot's single decision can impact a lot of lives and a lot of other things. And this, of course, improves the tactical decision making as well, right? So the top users for artificial intelligence include IT automation, which is 47%, quality control 46%, cybersecurity 41%, predictive analytics 38%, and customer services 37%. This is Deloitte 2020. When we look at the major firms, the major new billionaires, the major new companies that have evolved in the world in the recent past, like Google, like Facebook, like Instagram, all of these, the social media, the entire wave of social media around us is essentially an AI wave. Because, what is Google selling? So number one, the search engine. Search engines itself are an AI technology. That's where AI starts from, right? And what they're selling in the world right now are the analytics, right? So these analytics are also a product of AI, and they give better insights into the market, to the world, compared to anybody else. And just look, for example, one example that like Google probably knows better about our traffic than we do, because they have the Google Maps. They have insights from all the cell phone users who are actually using Google Maps for their own use, and they have better traffic insights compared to what we have. And if we do not have a technology of this sort, a disruptive technology of this sort, working with the data coming to our companies, then the other cost, for example, the cost of putting cameras all over the country to get just the idea about the traffic is such an expensive prospect compared to people crowdfunding their own sensors, which is giving information back to the central company and which is helping us reform and refine traffic, to helping to make it better. And with the data in our power to be employed for the betterment of the road network in the future. This is just one example. So this is how the world is evolving, and this is why people like Vladimir Putin have said that whoever leads in AI will rule the world, right? So there's another very interesting saying that was there. I picked it up from an article in Forbes. It was in January 2019. It said, AI wars. Will China defeat the US? And just at the beginning of the article, they put it forth that artificial intelligence is forecasted to add $15.7 trillion to the global GDP by the year 2030. Of course, the number varies. Some people have quoted greater numbers, like in the opening talk, Ambassador Saab quoted. So some people are saying that it's more than 20 trillion, right? So in this particular article in Forbes, it says that it's $15.7 trillion contribution to the global GDP by the year 2030. The main reason is that this technology is general purpose, right? So having applications that span industries like healthcare, transportation, financial services, energy, and so on. Some consider AI to be on par with what we have seen with the revolution of electricity during the 20th century, right? So what this means is that just like in when the revolution of electricity came, our entire dependence upon electricity increased, right? So just imagine this room without electricity right now. You won't be able to hear me, first thing. You won't be able to see me because you won't have light. The concept of, for example, having indoor activities like this has really evolved ever since the innovation of electricity, right? So the same way electricity has transformed human life, AI is expected to transform the human life in the same way, and it integrates with every form of life, not just technology that we think of. There are entire AI solutions, there are entire AI, you could say technology, you could say concepts that have actually permeated the, for example, fashion industry, the design of clothing, for example. So the way the industry manufactures things, how humans do their work, refining human performance, for instance, in many cases, judiciary, for example, music, for instance. So these are areas which are not traditionally considered as areas of engineering or computer science or pure tech areas. But now, since artificial intelligence helps gather, for example, patterns about what sort of clothes are popular, among people at a certain time of the year. And if we can predict this type of clothes, how about designing some clothes using artificial intelligence? And this is exactly what people are doing, right? So gauging customer insight, and then how about, for example, if there are certain designs, how about floating some of these to 1 million people and getting an idea about what they like, right? So just to get some probability of what will work in the market. So this is a transformative technology, and this is why these technologies are known as the disruptive technologies, because the way they work, they disrupt the way that the technology actually is perceived by humans and the way it impacts our lives. Okay, so this started to pull on me as well. If somebody can help change the slide. I reckon that this is a communication issue. Maybe the battery is not, because okay, it didn't respond. Okay, so here's putting artificial intelligence into the context of how the world is evolving right now, and particularly from the context of cybersecurity. Website set up 2021, actually this popular international forum, what they say is that more than 90,000 websites are hacked daily. Okay, this is if you look at the statistics, it is more than 90,000 websites around the world get hacked on a daily basis. This is the cybersecurity challenge of today. 31% of the companies have had their operational technology infrastructure compromised. This is CISSS saying it in 2018. They said there's an average of 24,000 malicious mobile apps blocked per day. This is semantic, semantic antivirus. We are familiar with that. So they put out this number. WordPress, by the way, is so popular. Maybe a lot of our institute's websites are made on WordPress. And guess what? WordPress is the most hacked CMS, with 83% of the compromised websites being hosted on this platform. Right, so what websites that here have been hacked, 90,000 per day, 83% of them are based on WordPress. And try asking any website developer where your website is, in which platform it is based, right? So any company falls victim to a company falls victim to a ransomware attack every 14 seconds. This is Cybercrime Magazine 2020, right? So every 14 seconds, a new company is falling victim to a cyber attack, and during my speech, so many cyber attacks have taken place already. Nothing to do with me. Okay, and then 43% of the cyber attacks are aimed towards small businesses. Okay, maybe we think that we are not important enough that somebody will hack our website. Guess what? So 43% of cyber attacks are aimed towards small businesses. This is CNBC 2019, and only 14% of small businesses are equipped to deal with cyber attacks. This is also CNBC 2019. So, and suddenly website being hacked, and many businesses are dependent upon it. The websites are your main, your front face, because people don't really read newsletters a lot these days now, because everybody's on the net all the time, and the website is your front face. Coming to the criticality of the previous information and linking it to the warfare regime. Now we know that in hybrid warfare, there are 3 steps in which the hybrid warfare actually takes place. So in the first step, this is information, psychological warfare, and manipulative cyber attacks. So the existence of social media, because now, for example, imagine the old world before the social media, where things were aired on television and they were in the newspapers, etc. If somebody even produced something like a deep fake, for instance, newspapers or media companies could be held accountable for what sort of information they're airing, right? Or what's the source, or if they defame somebody, there was a way to go to the court or something like that. But now, with the capability to produce deep fakes being in the hands of everybody, with free apps that they can find across the internet, right? So it's very easy to produce, very convincing information that you can put out there on the internet and you could say brand anybody any way you want, right? So people are not accountable anymore, and then it requires a whole different sort of technology to find the epicenters of, for example, organized defamation campaigns, which would be there in case of a hybrid war, right? So what's being aired in the media at any particular time, the mainstream media, that conveys somehow how the world is perceiving you, right? So when this, the Pulwama incident and everything happened in 2019, I happened to be in Norway at that time, and because I was in international community and I got stuck for some time over there, could not fly back to Pakistan. So I could interact with the people over there and get some idea about what sort of things were permeating in their media. And it seemed to be, my impression was that a lot of them were actually following Indian media. They were not reading Indian media directly, but many of the reports going to their newspapers in their language were actually being picked up by news sources which were publicizing that version, right? So anyway, this is one thing, that information and the psychological warfare, the manipulative tactics, these are there, and these are a serious threat. They're there all the time. This is taking place in shaping global opinion, right? Then comes the cyber war. So once the information campaign has gone for a certain time, then is the cyber war, and then it comes to conventional warfare. And actually, it was called as conventional warfare by the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. I call it the armed conflict because armed conflict is no longer traditional conflict anymore. And I have to be really quick, so just give me 2 minutes. I'll try to sum up things. So already most of this is taken care of. So I'll go to the more interesting parts for you. So also of course there's the proxy wars and a lot of other things that are taking place. So let's read the summary. With hybrid warfare, it's cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, economic warfare, and proxy warfare, which are the 4 components actually, coming together to actually, do the cyber warfare. And the reason why I said that there is not conventional warfare anymore is because weapons are also now mechanized. They're also now artificial intelligence. We know about the around 22 hours long flight tests of F-16s. Autonomous F-16s that have been done by the US, for example, and technology permeates like anything anywhere in the world, as we know. So there are autonomous flight systems, there are helicopters, there are this Black Hornet, for example, small machines. We've all seen the Iron Dome in action, right? So this has changed the traditional way the wars take place. And I'll invite you to look at this. For example, this is a statement from an article from a letter that has been written to the United Nations by various prominent scientists of the world, including Stephen Hawking. And this is what he's saying, that autonomous weapons, which threaten to usher in the third revolution in warfare after gunpowder and nuclear arms. So it's the third biggest technology in terms of warfare after gunpowder and nuclear arms, will permit armed conflicts to be fought at a scale greater than ever and at time scales faster than humans can comprehend. So tactical decision making will be difficult for humans to make. We're all familiar with the drones and everything, and that now the new concept is, you could say the loyal wingman concept. It's a well-known project, taking place in the US, that a lot of flying machines with one pilot will be autonomous and will be fighting war on their own. So let me skip this, and if you look at the market insights, you can see that AI is growing at a very fast rate. I have the numbers, but since the time is short, so I'll skip some of this. Similarly, for the technical decision making, now the technical decision making is being, rendered to machines in some cases, not for the most critical technologies like the nuclear technology, but for some of the less critical things. But this has to be done because otherwise, fast response cannot come if just we rely on the human response cycle. So AI is based upon the technology which is applicable to civilian as well as military users in the same way. That algorithms are of the same type, but of course their applications are very, very different. But the algorithms themselves remain the same. So at National Center of Artificial Intelligence also, I've already gone through the introduction. So we are also working on several kinds of products which we are actually putting there in Pakistan, and we've had worked with the various military segments as well for various kinds of activities. So let me skip the some summaries and show you a glimpse of some of the products that we've developed. Maybe this will be more interesting for you. So this is a Safe City project, for instance. We've already developed and deployed our own artificial intelligence-based technology for space recognition, for vehicle recognition in 2 major cities, Lahore and Mannar. And there have been actual incidents where our systems have resulted in apprehension of the criminals that have been apprehended from the field in very crowded scenarios. So imagine what what saving comes from just averting one such incident, right? So similarly, we have given software to Pakistan's judiciary. This is for the Supreme Court of Pakistan and for many other other security organizations. This is also for PARCO, for instance. There are other software we've developed for the medical imaging community. There are so many hospitals, for Al Khan Hospital here in Karachi, for Shifa in Islamabad, various other hospitals across Pakistan. We are developing various kind of technology for pulmonology, for brain cancer, for breast cancer, for various other kinds of problems, for vascular disease, for tuberculosis, for thalassemia, and this is for epilepsy. That's the devices that we have made. So National Center of AI is doing its own efforts and organizing various kinds of seminars and stuff as well to bring people together. Again, great pleasure to speak with you all. And just the last ray of hope that I would like to leave with you is that, for example, we launched this certified artificial intelligence program, the certification in AI, the technical certification. And to our amazement, we discovered that our following, or we would say the way our outreach was not just to Pakistani industry, but also to a lot of foreign industry. And what we found is that many countries have come to us that they want to collaborate with us and train their professionals in AI using our resources and people we have. We are already embarking on that. So just yesterday we received another request for this. So if you want to get in touch with me, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yasir, for a very detailed presentation. Thank you for highlighting that artificial intelligence is integrated with every aspect of life and that it has both civilian as well as military uses. Our next speaker is Professor Dr. I apologize. Shahida Vizaris, Dean College of Economics and Social Development, Institute of Business Management. She will speak on Pakistan's economic challenges and challenges amid global power contestation. You have the floor.
Everybody, thank you very much, Department of International Relations and Center for International Strategic Studies for inviting me for today's presentation. Actually, it's very difficult to talk about economic crisis these days because there are lots of economic crises. So in 15 minutes, it becomes difficult to discuss all the crises. But what I do is that I just start off with the mother crisis, and then I will show you how this mother crisis is giving rise to a lot of other crises, and how if we want to tackle the different crises, we can just tackle the mother crisis, and then its effect will be felt throughout the economy. And before I start the presentation, I've recently, about 2 months back, I've written this book on how to tackle these crises through out-of-the-box solutions. Because if you look at what is happening in Pakistan currently, not currently, but for the last 30 years, we have been going to the IMF very, very frequently, and because of that, we are following a model which I discussed briefly just now. And because of that, our crises are getting worse. And today we find ourselves in a situation where we are facing a meltdown. And yet we continue with the same policies. We continue to go to the IMF. And there is a chattering class in this country which is now saying that after this program finishes, we have to go to the IMF again. So this is what Einstein said. He said that if you are trying to do something again and again, and it is not yielding results, and yet you continue with the same policies, then you are insane. So in this chapter, there is a chapter, chapter 3 in this book, where I have tried to answer this question, whether our economic managers and those in the corridors of power, are they insane, or are they, there is some other reason why they continue with the same policies in spite of the fact that these policies are not delivering. Okay, so with this brief introduction, I'm going to talk about the balance of payment crisis management. And you see, for the last, since the 1990s, especially since we had, these governments, when there was restoration of democracy, then all the PMLN and People's Party, they kept going very frequently, borrowing from the International Monetary Fund. And the reason was that we had a balance of payment crisis. So the balance of payment crisis triggers the government to seek for foreign exchange reserves, and therefore they go to the IMF. And when we go to the IMF, it triggers a lot of other crises. There is not enough time, but I'll be happy to answer questions if there are any questions later on. But what I'm trying to say is that this balance of payment crisis gives rise to, first of all, debt crisis, because we keep borrowing and our governments keep spending the money recklessly, and they continue to live like kings and queens, and their lifestyles are such, and their governments are very large. So all the money that they borrow, a lot of the money goes back to the countries from where the money came. And we continue to do the same recklessness. Every government that comes, it finds it very easy to continue to borrow, to continue with its lifestyle, and all the money gets recycled back. So this balance of payment crisis gives rise to the debt crisis. And then it gives rise to the growth crisis. Because you see, if you look at the 1990s, in the 1990s, rate of growth, because of borrowing from the international financial institutions, declined to only 4.6%, average annual rate of growth for the 1990s. Whereas the rate of growth for the 1980s, which was not a very exceptional decade, but in spite of that, the rate of growth for the 1980s was 6.4% average annual rate of growth. And in the 60s, obviously, it was much higher. So this debt crisis, balance of payment crisis, gives rise to the debt crisis, which gives rise to the growth crisis, and also it gives rise to the development crisis, because there is a lot of emphasis by the International Monetary Fund that the government should reduce its expenditures. And the government is obviously, in the 1990s, it was not able to, in the initial years, it did not reduce its defense expenditure, but towards the end of the 1990s, even the defense expenditure was curtailed in real terms. And then the current expenditure can't be curtailed because governments are very large. I mean, even the present times when the country is going through such a crisis, there are about more than 70 cabinet members, and every time they go abroad, about an entourage of about 60 people go and they live in the most expensive hotels and things. So the current expenditures are also not curtailed. And then debt servicing can't be curtailed, because that's the whole idea, to milk Pakistan, to get all the, extract the surplus and send it abroad, so that the debt servicing is not, expenditure cannot be curtailed. So the only expenditure that is really curtailed is the development expenditure. So much so that in the 1990s, there was no expenditure on development, and that is why the 1990s is known as the lost decade. There was no expenditure on health, education, power, water, no expenditures. And that is why today we have a huge number of, young people who were born in the 1990s, and again under pressure from the IMF, we did not spend on education and health, with the result that it was the poor people, because it is poor people that consume government expenditures on health and education, with the result that we have a very large army of young, uneducated people that we have raised, that were born in the 1990s and 2000 decade. So we have the development crisis also. Then we have a social crisis, because when people are young and they don't have money to buy medicines or food, then they go on a rampage and they steal and they do robberies and they commit all kinds of crimes because of the Durkheimian modernization perspective, which says that there is that economic variables impact the social variables. So then we have a lot of crimes and snatchings and kidnapping for ransom and murders, etc. And then finally we also have the political crisis. And because every time any government is close to default, that government used to be removed from power and a new government used to be brought in its place. And the first statement that the government used to make was that we will not default on our foreign loans. So these are the various crises. We went through the same thing in the 1990s, and we are going through the same thing in the present times, because like they say that history repeats itself for nations that do not learn from history. So that is why we continue with the same crisis again and again. So then let me tell you that these crises are becoming much worse. Today, if you look at the situation in Lahore, you will find out that the political crisis and the constitutional crisis is much worse today than it was in the 1990s. Anyhow, there's not enough time to comment, but all the crises, the growth crisis, the development crisis, the social crisis, the distributional crisis, and the political crisis and the constitutional crisis are again back with a vengeance. Okay, so let me tell you how IMF tries to address this balance of payment crisis. They have two major policy prescriptions. First of all, they tell the government to devalue the currency, because they say that the balance of payment deficit has to be met through market mechanisms. So they say that the government should devalue the currency, and devaluing the currency will increase our exports and make our imports expensive, so that will reduce the demand for imports. Now, for the last about 30 years, we've been doing that, but we've not been able to increase our exports through devaluation, because there are lots of things that we can discuss, but shortage of time. But there is something such as the Marshall-Lerner condition, which states that the sum of elasticities of demand and supply for exports and imports should be greater than 1 if devaluation has to bridge this gap. But even if the sum of elasticities is greater than 1, and even if you are able to bridge the trade deficit, there is still a problem that our imports are on account of capital goods, industrial raw material, and oil. And because of that, when you devalue, you make them more expensive. When you make them more expensive, then the cost of doing business goes up. And when the cost of doing business goes up, prices go up. So we have a very serious cost push inflation in Pakistan. And then the second blunder that the IMF gets the government to do is that they say, now you have this serious crisis situation, inflationary situation, so you increase the lending rate. So the government then increases the lending rate. The lending rate should be increased only if there is demand pull inflation. If your demand is very high and your economy is overheating, then you want to dampen that demand, so you increase the lending rate. But our inflation is not of the demand pull type. It is because of devaluation. It is because oil prices are rising. It is because the cost of doing business is rising because of increase in the prices of capital goods and industrial raw material. And yet, we are made to increase the lending rate, which further increases the prices and which further reduces our investments and our output growth and employment. So these are the two prescriptions that the IMF makes, which worsen the crisis in the country. So this is the IMF model, which has totally failed. And I would like to reiterate that not only the IMF model has failed, but Pakistan's economic managers have totally failed to deliver. And I think that it will not be enough to just change the policies. It's important to get rid of the economic managers who've been there for the last 30 years. Every time any government is there, the same managers come. किसी government में कोई आ जाता है, किसी में कोई बैठा दिया जाता है. So we have to get rid of all of them, and we have to come up with pragmatic policies. Okay, so let me tell you what is my solution. I have developed an alternative, and I'm very happy to share with you that my alternative is far superior to the IMF alternative model. First, with hindsight, we know that devaluation for the last many years have not increased exports, and reduction in import demand has been at a very high cost in the form of deindustrialization. And even just recently, in the present crisis, only in the textile sector, 75 lakh people have lost their jobs. So you can imagine, in other sectors, there are lots of other people who lost their jobs. So there's unemployed people who were used to earning salaries, now they are there. So obviously, we all have to be prepared for getting our purses snatched and for all kinds of crimes. So, and also we have to bear in mind the other adverse ramifications of devaluation on inflation, investment, output and employment that I just talked about. And in view of the above, I am proposing selective demand restraint rather than across the board restraint. For example, the IMF says that you increase when you devalue, your prices of imports will increase, and prices of imports increase across the board. I have suggested that instead of making all the imports expensive, I have suggested that we ban the imports of luxury goods for the time being, for about 2 years or 1 year, which means that we don't have to import cat food and dog food. At the present times, we are still importing cat food and dog food, and in spite of the fact that we are not able to import life-saving drugs. Life-saving drugs are not available, but cat food and dog food is available. And also, we are importing fruits and vegetables, and we are importing, luxury goods, mobiles and cars, bulletproof cars. So I've suggested that we need to put a ban on the import of these luxury goods. A lot of times people come and say that we are in the WTO regime. Yes, I am also aware of the fact that we are in the WTO regime, but India is also in the WTO regime, and India uses its intelligence to ban the imports of whatever goods it does not want. For example, India has been using non-tariff barriers to ban the import of textiles. We can also devise non-tariff barriers for Pakistan if we wanted to ban the import of these luxury goods. Second thing is that according to the balance of payment data for 2017-18, if we ban the import of these luxury goods for this year, 17-18, then we can save $3.8 billion from our import bill. Then I have suggested that, for petroleum group, in 2017-18, we imported petroleum products to the tune of $8.4 billion. Now, we have friends who have suggested that they can supply us gas and petrol and LNG in return for either for barter trade or payment in local currencies. For example, we had this offer from the Islamic Republic of Iran in the 1990s, but the government had told the bureaucrats who were visiting Iran to just ignore these interesting offers because Washington will not allow this. So the main problem is political, that we ignore the interests of this country because Washington will not allow Pakistan to do what is in Pakistan's larger interest. Now, the Russian Federation has also offered that they can offer Pakistan LNG and gas and oil and wheat in return for barter or payment in local currencies. So, if we do that, then we can save this $8.5 billion from the import bill. And then These are the short-term measures. Then I have also proposed long-term measures. I have proposed that our problem is not to make our exports cheaper if we want to increase the demand for exports. Because for the last 30 years, we've been making our exports cheaper without any positive results. So what I have proposed is that we need to improve the quality of our exports. For example, under pressure from Western chemical companies, governments of Pakistan, all the governments have been promoting GM technology. Now, there are many potential markets and existing markets where they have banned GMOs. For example, out of the European Union, 27 countries, 19 have banned GMOs. So, because in Pakistan we haven't even passed the labeling law and our photosanitary standards are very low. So, I have proposed that we increase our photosanitary standards and we ban GMOs. Actually, there is an international convention that GMOs in food products are banned, but the government of Pakistan is not properly implementing this, and therefore I propose that we need to ban GMOs, particularly in food products, and we need to increase our photosanitary standards, and this way we'll be able to increase our exports to the Russian Federation, because the Russian Federation has also banned GMOs, and to the Central Asian republics, very small countries, but they are thinking about the health of their people. And also European Union, 19 countries out of this 27 in the European Union have banned GMOs. So this way we'll really be able to increase our exports instead of trying to make them cheaper and increase the exports. So therefore, I have also suggested alternative markets for our exports and also finding alternative products for exporting them. So these are medium to long-term measures. And in 2000, I had prepared a study and I had sent it to the government of Pakistan, which involved increasing our gold reserves, because we used to, all the countries used to keep a major foreign exchange, in the form of gold and other precious things. But when the gold standard was abandoned, we stopped, a very small percentage of our reserves are in the form of gold. But India, Israel, all these countries are still using gold reserve management as a strategy. Okay, so this is what I had, and then also I had proposed repatriation of looted Pakistani assets transferred abroad. I can't, because of shortage of time, I can't go into the details, but I think the government of Pakistan has used it very inefficiently. I think if it's properly implemented, then we can get a lot of the looted money and corruption money should be used for debt servicing. And then finally, I've already talked about Cartagena protocols and photosanitary standards. And so then I just, so what I'm saying is that my model is far superior to the IMF strategy. In my model, the economy is not shrunk, the economy expands. Because of barter trade, our economy will expand with and we will also save our foreign exchange reserves. And the burden of cost of adjustment will be borne by the rich people and wealthy people, and not by the middle class and the lower middle class. Because now poor people are finding it very difficult to eat roti also. So and that also the wealthy class will pay a very, very small cost, not a very serious cost in terms of. And at the end, I'll just say that if there was time, I could have discussed my model in greater detail, but I'm saying that the reason why Pakistan finds itself in this present quagmire is not because alternatives are not available, but the reason is that there's not enough political will to go for better alternatives and to save Pakistan from its meltdown. The real reason is not that alternatives are not available. The real reason is that there's no political will to go for a superior alternative. Thank you very much.
Thank Thank you, Dr. Saiba, for your very valuable thoughts. We couldn't agree more that Pakistan is facing a balance of payment crisis and needs to curtail expenditure. Thank you for sharing your model on how to address this crisis. Our last speaker today is Dr. Ansar Pervez, former chairman of Pakistan Commission. He will speak on the peaceful uses of nuclear technology in Pakistan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's a pleasure to be here, but it is certainly not a pleasure to be the last speaker because you are the last man standing between enjoying some free time and lunch. But anyway, also had prepared some slides, and I can see a lot of familiar faces here. People who had to bear or भुगतना जिनको पढ़ा था मेरी workshops का, and they would see all the slides. लेकिन यहाँ मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि maybe I can just do some talking without showing the slides. In the first place, यहाँ पे जो system है slides का वो भी बहुत slides तो बनी हुई थी, but I'm not going to use it. और दूसरी बात ये है कि अगर slides नहीं है तो I can finish whenever the chair looks at me and say कि भाई रहम करो, तो मैं कहूँगा कि मैं खत्म कर देता हूँ because I don't have any slides that I have to go through. So we are going to talk about nuclear technology, how it affects the economy, how it affects our life, and I think all of us who are present here they know कि nuclear technology का जिक्र भी उसका करते हैं, respect भी करते हैं, and at the same time I have no hesitation in saying कि लोग उससे डरते भी हैं. So today, what I'll try to do in this 10, 15, 20 minutes that are available to me, कि मैं थोड़ा सा इसके बारे में आपको पर्सपेक्टिव दे दूँ कि एटॉमिक कमीशन जो एक्चुअली फ्लैग बेयर है न्यूक्लियर टेक्नोलॉजी की पाकिस्तान में, वो व्हाट दे हैव बीन डूइंग सो फार एंड हाउ दे हैव एक्टेड टू आई वुड से बेनिफिट द सोसाइटी और उनसे कैसे फायदा उठाना. So in the first place, if we talk about nuclear technology, so we can easily divide it into two parts. Number one is the nuclear radiations which come out of the nuclei. These nuclear radiations have a penetrating capability and they can also be used to impart energy at a certain designated place. And because they have this capability to impart energy at wherever you direct them to, तो जैसे ट्यूमर्स हैं, कैंसर्स हैं और दूसरी चीजें, they can be used to kill them. And because they have a capability to penetrate to things, you can see inside the thing. For example, you can see much better inside the body. You can see much better inside equipment, inside machines in a factory, and more importantly, you can also see inside a truck which is crossing the border, or is going from one place to another. कि उसके अंदर क्या रखा है without opening the door of the truck and without getting into it from outside, because you have the penetration capability, तो आप उसके अंदर देख सकते हैं. तो इस तरह ये जो रेडिएशंस हैं इनका इस्तेमाल हम बहुत सारा करते हैं, मतलब डायग्नोसिस में करते हैं बिकॉज देयर इज अ कैपेबिलिटी टू सी, हम ट्रीटमेंट का करते हैं बिकॉज देयर इज अ कैपेबिलिटी टू किल द ट्यूमर, और हम इंडस्ट्री में भी करते हैं बिकॉज इट गिव्स अस अ कैपेबिलिटी टू सी इनसाइड थिंग्स, और हम सिक्योरिटी में भी करते हैं, जैसे हमने अभी कहा कि वी कैन सी इनसाइड व्हाटएवर इज बीइंग ट्रांसपोर्टेड फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अनदर. एंड नेचुरली पाकिस्तान में, मतलब बिकॉज ऑफ दिस हमें पता है कि आपको सेक्टर को पता है, यू माइट हैव हर्ड मेनी टाइम कि हमारे 19 मेडिकल सेंटर्स हैं, न्यूक्लियर मेडिकल सेंटर जो रेडिएशन का डायग्नोस्टिक और ट्रीटमेंट के लिए इस्तेमाल करते हैं. 2 सेंटर अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन है, and this number is not important, and this number may not even be enough for the large population Pakistan का. But then what Atomic Energy Commission has done is that over a period of this 50-60 years, उन्होंने इस टेक्नोलॉजी को लेके इस्तेमाल किया, और उसके बाद बहुत सारे प्राइवेट हॉस्पिटल्स हैं which use the same technology, and as a matter of fact the total number of hospitals in Pakistan which make use of this technology for treatment and diagnostic is around 50. और इसके अलावा हम जाहिर है कि इसको फिर एग्रीकल्चर में भी इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं बिकॉज वी कैन समटाइम्स चेंज द नेचर ऑफ द क्रॉप्स, वी कैन मेक देम ग्रो फास्टर, वी कैन मेक देम मोर टॉलरेंट टू ड्राउट, वी कैन मेक देम मोर टॉलरेंट टू इंसेक्ट, और ये एक और फायदा है इसका. और उसके लिए एटॉमिक कमीशन के 4 सेंटर हैं, और उसके अलावा पाकिस्तान में बहुत सारे दूसरे एग्रीकल्चर सेंटर हैं जो इस तरह का काम करते हैं. तो और व्हाट इज मोर इम्पोर्टेंट इज कि ऑल्दो अभी हम आगे चल के जिक्र करेंगे न्यूक्लियर उसके ऊपर टेक्नोलॉजी पे जो एम्बार्गोज हैं, रिस्ट्रिक्शंस हैं, बट जो न्यूक्लियर रेडिएशंस हैं और जो रेडियो आइसोटोप्स हैं व्हिच गिव आउट दिस रेडिएशन उनके ऊपर कोई पाबंदी नहीं है फॉर दैट मैटर। यस, बाद दफा हमें थोड़ा बहुत रोना धोना पड़ता है रेडियो आइसोटोप्स बाहर से लेने के लिए, बट वी ऑल्सो हैव अवर ओन सिस्टम ऑफ प्रोडक्शन एट सिंध। हमारे पास न्यूक्लियर रिएक्टर है, हम उसमें खुद भी रेडियो आइसोटोप बना सकते हैं, लेकिन इसके ऊपर कोई एम्बार्गोज नहीं, कोई कुछ नहीं, क्योंकि इससे कोई आप मेजर डिस्ट्रक्शन नहीं कर सकते। एंड सिंस वी टॉक्ड ऑफ रेडिएशंस के वो आपको डैमेज कर सकती हैं, तो एक जहन में आदमी के ऑटोमेटिकली, और मुझे पता है कि हम लोग सारे कंसर्न होते हैं कि न्यूक्लियर रेडिएशन हमें हर्ट तो नहीं कर रही है, हर्ट तो नहीं कर सकते। तो यस, कोई भी रेडिएशन अगर हमारे जिस्म में दाखिल होगी तो इट विल मेक एन इम्पैक्ट, लेकिन if the quantity of the radiation which is entering the body is small, तो वो impact जो भी बॉडी पे होगा, the rest of the healthy cells of the body वो उसको रिकवर करेंगे। वैसे भी हमें पता है हमारे कितने सेल रोज खत्म होते हैं, बनते हैं, रीजनरेट होते हैं, तो छोटे से लेवल पे अगर कोई इम्पैक्ट होता है ऑन एनी सेल ऑफ द बॉडी तो उसका कोई लार्ज लॉन्ग टर्म इफेक्ट नहीं होगा। एंड एज अ मैटर मे बी मोस्ट ऑफ यू नो ऑलरेडी कि इस वक्त जो हम यहाँ पे बैठे हैं वी आर ऑलरेडी बीइंग एक्सपोज्ड टू, इफ यू फ्लाई फ्रॉम इस्लामाबाद टू कराची, जब मैं इस्लामाबाद से अभी कराची आए हैं और वापस मैं इस्लामाबाद जाऊंगा तो आई स्पेंड अबाउट 190 मिनट्स इन एयर। 190 मिनट्स में बिकॉज आई एम क्लोजर टू द कॉस्मिक रेडिएशन व्हिच आर कमिंग फ्रॉम टॉप, तो मुझे एक रेडिएशन डोज मिलेगी व्हिच विल बी द सेम रेडिएशन डोज व्हिच आई विल गेट इन 1 ईयर इफ आई स्टे आउटसाइड द वॉल ऑफ ए न्यूक्लियर पावर। तो मतलब कहने का ये है कि जो रेडिएशन की है वी आर ऑलवेज एक्सपोज टू देम, बट एज लॉन्ग एज वी कैन मेजर देम, एज लॉन्ग एज वी कैन मेक श्योर दैट वी आर नॉट एक्सपोज टू अ लार्ज क्वांटिटी, तो वो हमारे लिए कोई हैजर्डस नहीं है, हम उसमें रहते हैं और रहते चले आए हैं। एंड ये हमारे फायदे में है कि हम रेडिएशन को किस तरह इस्तेमाल करें। दूसरा जो न्यूक्लियर टेक्नोलॉजी से रिलेटेड काम है वो है न्यूक्लियर फिशन का, जिसमें एक एटम ब्रेक होता है और एनर्जी जनरेट होती है। और जब 1939 में व्हेन फिशन वाज डिस्कवर्ड फर्स्ट टाइम इन जर्मनी, तो आइंस्टाइन रोड ए लेटर टू फ्रैंकलिन रूजवेल्ट जो यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स का प्रेसिडेंट था कि जो न्यूक्लियर फिशन जो डिस्कवर हुई है इससे आप इनॉर्मस अमाउंट ऑफ एनर्जी भी जनरेट कर सकते हैं और उसको आप पीसफुल पर्पसेस के लिए इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं और उसको आप डिस्ट्रक्टिव पर्पसेस के लिए इस्तेमाल। तो वो इसके बाद फिर उस वक्त लड़ाई हो रही थी 1939 में, सेकंड वर्ल्ड वॉर हो रही थी, तो अमेरिका में उसके ऊपर उन्होंने मैनहट्टन प्रोजेक्ट शुरू किया, अल्टीमेटली दे मेड द बॉम्ब, और उसके बाद फिर उन्होंने एटम पर पीस प्लान शुरू किया एंड दे आल्सो स्टार्टेड मेकिंग न्यूक्लियर पावर। तो न्यूक्लियर फिशन जो है बिकॉज वी कैन आल्सो यूज इट फॉर मिलिट्री पर्पसेस एंड वी कैन यूज इट फॉर द सिविल पर्पसेस एज वेल। इसके ऊपर पाकिस्तान पे पाबंदी है ताकि ये दोनों चीजें आपस में मिक्स ना हो जाए, मिलना जाए। बट एनीवे हमने पाकिस्तान में सिविल डिफेंस के लिए तो जो काम किया है किया है। पाकिस्तान में न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट भी बनाए, तो एक जो पहला न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट था कैनो, वो तो 50 साल ऑपरेटेड एंड वाज शट डाउन, इट वाज ऑपरेटेड विदाउट मिनरल सपोर्ट। दुनिया में आज तक कोई न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट ऐसा नहीं बना और चला which was operated without the support of the country which built it, without the support of the country which designed it. And not only that, that particular country did not provide us any support, बल्कि हमें कहीं से भी दुनिया में support नहीं मिल रही थी, कोई टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं मिल रही थी, कोई इक्विपमेंट नहीं मिल रहा था और कोई पार्ट नहीं मिल रहा। तो उसके बावजूद तो रिएक्टर जो है वो हमने 50 साल से भी चला के बंद कर दिया। अभी हमारे पास 6 न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट से 4 चश्मा में है, 300 मेगावाट के, 300, 330, 340, and there are 2 nuclear power plants near Karachi, 1100 megawatt. A total, as I think the chair also said, 3,600 megawatt हम इसमें generate करते हैं, which is 8% of Pakistan's total installed capacity. But in terms of generation, because our plants operate much better than the other power plants, क्योंकि उनका कैपेसिटी फैक्टर बहुत ज़्यादा है, वो ज़्यादा देर चलते हैं, तो इसलिए उनकी जो टोटल एनर्जी जनरेटेड है वो अपने हिस्से से ज़्यादा है एंड इट्स अबाउट 12%। और एज अ मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट ओनली अ फ्यू डेज अगो एक दिन ऐसा भी था when 30%, nearly 1/3 of the total energy was generated by nuclear power plants. Why the other power plants could not be operated? Fuel बहुत महंगा है, and for that reason उन प्लांट को लोअर कैपेसिटी फैक्टर पे रखना पड़ता है। न्यूक्लियर कैन कंटिन्यू। तो ये कंट्रीब्यूशन है न्यूक्लियर का। और एज अ मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट एक कैलकुलेशन भी हमारे लोगों ने की है कि 2022 में the amount of energy, the amount of electricity that was generated by nuclear power plants, अगर ये nuclear power plant से generate ना करते और उसकी जगह हम oil import करते और उससे power plant चलाते तो तकरीबन हमें $3 बिलियन का तेल import करना पड़ता। और अगर हम ये RLNG import करते जो नेचुरल गैस लिक्विफाइड करके भेजी जाती है एक मुल्क से दूसरे मुल्क में कतर से खरीदते हैं और भी जगह से खरीदते हैं तो $2.2 बिलियन में इम्पोर्ट करना पड़ता है और अगर कोल करते हैं तो $1.5 बिलियन इम्पोर्ट करना पड़ता है। इसका मतलब ये है कि बाय वर्च्यू ऑफ ऑपरेटिंग पावर प्लांट हमने इतनी फॉरेन एक्सचेंज की सेविंग की है। अब समवन माइट से कि हम जब न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट बनाते हैं कैपिटल कॉस्ट होती है उसका हम कर्जा लेते हैं तो कर्जा भी वापस करना पड़ता है। द टोटल कर्जा दैट हैड टू बी रिटर्न इस केस में वाज $1 बिलियन। इसका मतलब है कि ईच केस हम $1 बिलियन से $1.5 बिलियन की सेविंग इन न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट की फॉरेन एक्सचेंज में हो रही है। एंड आई मस्ट आल्सो से कि ऑल दीस लोन्स व्हिच हैव बीन टेकन फ्रॉम चाइना to build these nuclear power plants are returned by Atomic Energy Commission itself from the revenues of these power plants. गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान पे इसमें रिटर्न करने में लोन में कोई मसला नहीं है सिवाय इसके कि उनको लोगों को पहले फॉरेन एक्सचेंज देना पड़ता है। तो लास्ट जो इसका पॉइंट है और अभी हम वी आर प्लानिंग होपफुली इंशाल्लाह कि हम और प्लांट भी बना सकेंगे और ये जो न्यूक्लियर और एनर्जी है दिस इज द कॉर्नरस्टोन ऑफ कहना चाहिए कि सिक्योरिटी ऑफ द कंट्री। मैंने एक दफा एक रिपोर्ट देखी थी रिटन लॉन्ग टाइम अगो वो अमेरिका में एक थिंक टैंक था स्टैफ के नाम से तो उसका जो था कि फ्यूचर स्ट्रेटजिक वो कुछ फ्यूचर एनर्जी की रिक्वायरमेंट को कैसे वो देखें तो उन्होंने उस वक्त जिक्र किया था जब अमेरिका में भी शेल गैस नहीं निकली थी एंड एट दैट टाइम दे रियली वर डिपेंडेंट ऑन द ऑयल दैट केम फ्रॉम द मिडिल ईस्ट। इफ द ऑयल ऑफ द मिडिल ईस्ट डिड नॉट कम तो उनकी इकोनॉमी को खतरा था। तो थिंक टैंक रो कि भाई ये जो बात है बिकॉज वी हैव टू स्पेंड so much we have to pay so much attention to have a military presence in that region. We have to pay so much attention to make sure that this oil supply continues from that region और इससे हमारी जो फॉरेन पॉलिसी है वो भी मुतासिर हो रही है एंड देयरफॉर वी शुड सी कि हम क्या कर सकते हैं और क्या हमें करना चाहिए। फॉर दैट मैटर एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी डायरेक्टली रिलेट्स टू द इकोनॉमिक सिक्योरिटी ऑफ द कंट्री। जैसे आप देख सकते हैं यूरोप में क्या हुआ when the Russians stopped the gas supply और अभी पाकिस्तान में क्या हो रहा है बिकॉज हमारे पास इलेक्ट्रिसिटी नहीं बिकॉज हमारे पास रिसोर्सेज नहीं है एंड इट ऑल्सो रिलेट टू द एनवायरमेंटल सिक्योरिटी बिकॉज अगर आप कोल के पावर प्लांट लगाएं दुनिया में दे आर वेरी चीप क्वाइट चीप और आप लगा सकते हैं और उससे यू कैन प्रोड्यूस एज मच एनर्जी एज यू वांट एज मच इलेक्ट्रिसिटी एज यू वांट लेकिन वो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड इमिट करते हैं जो क्लाइमेट चेंज को मुतासिर कर रही है। वो दूसरे पोल्यूशन इमिट करते हैं जो लाइफ को मुतासिर करते हैं। उसमें बहुत सारे कार्बन मोनोऑक्साइड एंड जो चीजें मोर देन 250 वो एस्टिमेट्स हैं कि मोर देन 250,000 पर्सन डाई इन द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स बिकॉज ऑफ द पोल्यूशन कॉज्ड बाय दिस थर्मल फ्यूल बर्निंग थर्मल फ्यूल और उसमें पावर प्लांट्स का कंट्रीब्यूशन जो है वो सबसे ज्यादा है। तो मतलब व्हाट द पॉइंट दैट आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक कि द वे यू जनरेट योर इलेक्ट्रिसिटी आल्सो कंट्रीब्यूट टू इकोनॉमिक सिक्योरिटी एंड ऑफ कोर्स इन द एंड जो आपकी नेशनल सिक्योरिटी है that also depends upon क्योंकि आपकी इकोनॉमी कैसी है। अगर इकोनॉमी कैसी होगी तो सिक्योरिटी विल आल्सो बी इम्पेयर्ड। सो देयरफॉर एनर्जी इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एंड आई थिंक न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट इस वक्त पाकिस्तान में बेस्ट ऑपरेटिंग प्लांट है कैपेसिटी वाइज और चीप भी है फॉर दैट मैटर। हमारे जो इस वक्त एवरेज एनर्जी प्रोडक्शन की कॉस्ट थी पिछले साल दैट वाज लेस देन 10 रुपीज और अभी आप देखेंगे 5 रुपए और 10 रुपए तो बिजली के रेट में वैसे बढ़ा देते हैं बिकॉज द फ्यूल कॉस्ट इज इंक्रीजिंग द इंपोर्टेड फ्यूल कॉस्ट और उसमें फ्यूल सरचार्ज कितना लग जाता है और रफली जो चार्ज कर रहे हैं तो 30 से भी जाते हैं आजकल। देयर आर ऑफ कोर्स सम ट्रांसमिशन एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लॉसेस लेकिन न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट इज डूइंग वेरी वेल इन दिस कॉन्टेक्स्ट और ये उसको लगातार कंट्रीब्यूट भी कर रहा है। द ओनली प्रॉब्लम विद न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट इज कि उनकी जो कैपिटल कॉस्ट है। अच्छा दूसरी बात है कि जैसे मैंने पहले कहा कि उनके जो न्यूक्लियर ऑपरेशन में ड्यूरिंग न्यूक्लियर ऑपरेशन कोई उसमें ऐसी रेडिएशन रिलीज नहीं है विच कैन हर्ट और जो उसमें इशू ये है कि द कैपिटल कॉस्ट इज वेरी हाई लेकिन उसको फ्यूल कॉस्ट बहुत कम है। द फ्यूल कॉस्ट ऑफ ए न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट इज लेस अराउंड 1 रुपी पर यूनिट। ऑफ कोर्स कैपिटल कॉस्ट को आपको पैसे देने पड़ते हैं तो जब हमें न्यूक्लियर के लिए आर्गूमेंट करना पड़ता है और लॉट ऑफ टाइम वी हैव टू डू दिस आर्गूमेंट गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान में इन एवरी प्लेस बिकॉज इट्स नॉट इजी for us to convince any government to build a nuclear power plant, because it takes more than 5 years to build the plant. और कोई भी जो government होती है, they are only mostly focused on the next 5 years political government. उनका यदि 5 साल में नहीं बनेगा तो फिर हमारा क्या इंटरेस्ट है? We'll make the payments and somebody else will cut the tape. तो ये थोड़ा सा मतलब इसमें मसला रहता है, but anyways, so plant अभी हमारे 6 power plant चल रहे हैं, another we have signed, hopefully it will materialize and the construction of that plant will start. तो इसकी I'll finish with saying with that कि जो capital cost ज़्यादा है, लेकिन चूँकि operation cost, petrol cost कम है, जब हमारी कोई डिबेट होती है तब मुझसे कहते हैं कि ये ऐसा ही है कि जैसे आप किराए पे रहें सारी उम्र या घर बना लें, एक दफ़ा तो पैसे खर्च होंगे लेकिन उसके बाद आप सुकून से रह सकते हैं। अगर आप न्यूक्लियर प्लांट बना लेंगे मुल्क में तो आप आराम से एनर्जी के क्राइसिस को देखते हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
So thank you very much for highlighting the significance of nuclear energy for national security and its role in reducing our import bill. With that, we come to the Q&A session. We have about 15 minutes for this, so please go ahead. Please identify yourself, introduce yourself, and also indicate the speaker to whom you are addressing the question.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. This is Habibullah Kalodo from BS International Relations, University of Sindh. So my question is that we discussed about the irresponsible statements from Indian representatives and Indian leadership. Sir, but still world sees Pakistan nuclear arsenals are unsafe, and especially Western world. What do you think? Is there any gap between gap in our policy, foreign policy, or our foreign ambassadors are not presenting our point world order? And sir, the second part is how do you see irresponsible statements from our leadership, like our ex-Interior Minister Sheikh Rashid stated that we also got Adha Kilo ka bam and power ka bam, and another political leader, ELP Chairman Saad Rizvi, is also commenting on this sensitive issue, and we are not taking any serious actions against them. So, my question is from Brigadier Aga Gul Ahmed.
My name is Ara Abdul. Second, what's your question? I couldn't make head or specifically, what are you asking?
Sir, I'm asking that if Indian leadership is giving irresponsible statements about attacking Pakistan and nuclear attack or any sort of attack, then why still world sees Pakistan nuclear arsenals are unsafe and not safe? And what about irresponsible statements from our leadership, like our ex-Minister of Interior in public rally, he said that we also got other kilo and kilo kabam. And what about Saad Rizvi? He's also talking on this sensitive issue, and why we are not taking some serious actions against them?
India is the sweetheart of the United States. Partly because India is facing China. We already have a dispute on the Macron line, the border that the British drew when China was divided in various fragments and had no power. So India has been right from the beginning in some sort of clash with China. That clash has been growing. Now America does not have an enemy. America wants China to emerge as an enemy so they can have their military and industrial setup working. As regards condemning, I think Pakistani diplomats let no chance go past condemning what India is doing or highlighting what India is doing. Regarding Sheikh Rashid or any politician, whenever they make statements for public basically, to cheer them up, to get claps from them, and just feel good about it. Their responsible statements are rare. I hope I've answered your question.
I want to add a very fundamental issue that you must recognize. And issue has been there ever since the discrimination in US and Western policy started between India and Pakistan over the nuclear issue. And the real reason at the heart of the problem is the fact that the United States or any country in the West does not want any Muslim country to acquire a nuclear weapons capability because such a capability is seen as potentially threatening Israel. That's the fundamental problem. And that's why the difference in approach towards the nuclear capabilities of India and Pakistan.
I think that there are two ways to look at it. As a student of social sciences, you know that everyone is biased and they have their own personal biases and interest are people. Both have very rightly explained this. The second point is on the statement. When the statements are made, we have to see the politician or what is his position. Even a minister's statement doesn't make any difference. We have to focus on the National Command Authority member or National Command Authority chairman. When we say, or I highlighted in my presentation also in reference to Prime Minister Modi, and he was saying that these are ye Qatar ki raat hai. These weapons are not for Diwali. So he was at that time chairman of National Command Authority of India. And the chairman of National Command Authority announces the use of a nuclear weapon. So we have to make a difference between the personalities and the officers. In a public rally, if minister or if any political party leader is making, it doesn't make any sense. We have to go for the office holders. This is first one. Second is, if you go for a responsibility and irresponsibility, agreed, Taliban or Mullah, whatever the terms West used to discriminate, why not they are using Hindu fundamentalists, that they are not Hindu Mullahs, why they are not talking about it? There is a bias. And economics is the main. India is a big economic market, better economy, so that's why it's more attractive. And second is, of course, we cannot try to, we try to understand the world, how the world moves. Strategically, military interest of the state, economic interest of the state, then norms of the state, or culture or ecological interest. Thank you.
Well, if I may add a comment. When someone in Pakistan is trying to say that we have weapons of small size, what he is basically saying is that we have tactical nuclear weapons. We made these weapons to close the gap of war which was created by Indian Cold Star Doctrine, which basically meant that they stationed troops and bases close to Pakistani border, and the intention was to go in quickly, cause damage to Pakistan and come back quickly, so that before Pakistan thinks of reacting, the international community comes in and Pakistan won't be able to react. So we made battlefield or tactical nuclear weapons to close that gap, and India knows that very well.
Next question.
Please be brief in your question because we just have 10 minutes more.
It's me, Mohammad Qasim Jawali from University of St. Jamshur International Relations Department. My question is for Dr. Zafar Nawaz. Sir, as you have briefly described India's counterforce and its impact on South Asian strategic studies, where you highlighted hypersonic missile program of India and capability to operationalize them to launch a preemptive strike within short time. This impacts our deterrent. While considering this scenario where our hypersonic missile program stands and what countermeasures Pakistan should consider on table.
I think that hypersonic missile, India is trying to perfect it, and it needs a lot of technological input. Recently, I think last year, one of their missile tests was misfired. That also indicates that Indians are not as fast as they are projected. Second is that when we look about that countermeasures, there are only countermeasure against the hypersonic missile says that you should have your own missile. A thematic approach is the only answer. If somebody starts thinking that you can raise a defensive system, maybe that's difficult. But if you can go for a counterforce, of course, you have need against hypersonic or very sophisticated missiles. Definitely, Pakistan's nuclear establishment is working on it. One cannot be thinking, but they did not announce that they are working on it. But there is an interesting in 2018. In one of the speeches of the naval chief of Pakistan at that time, he gave a reference that they are moving on these kind of technologies. And when you see the planning of the, I think, Ministry of Development of Production, they had somewhere in their planning, one report I came across, that reference was there. So in this context, when you start looking towards these new technologies and their integration with the weapon system, it takes time. So definitely state will be focusing. We cannot hear, I am not recommending that we are very much afraid or there is a real deterrence instability or X, Y, Z. I'm just projecting if they are working, naturally there is a security barrier for us and we have to respond.
My question is, Pakistan is currently working on a Shining Sea missile, but there are certain speculations that Pakistan is asked to roll back this program, and it said that it is a demand, it's a demand of IMF. However, there is one school of thought on this that IMF cannot pressurize any country that they should roll back any of their nuclear missiles. So if it's not IMF, so is it Israel? Because there are certain statements that Shining Sea missile could very easily destroy Israel.
I think that in 2015, similar debate started. 2015, it was started capping the ranges. Americans have always tried to pressurize Pakistan to not wear the tactical, which we say battlefield weapons, as well as long-range weapons. Generally, they give the impression Shining Sea is even capable to hit Israel from there. It's not a possibility. The basic reason is that when the states start moving from Shining Sea onward, 750 kilometers plus, that means that you are entering into the club of intercontinental ballistic missiles, which increase the vulnerability of the United States as well. If Pakistan had a long-range or intercontinental ballistic missile capability, then we had a tragedy of Salalah, when they came and they hit on our border and killed 25 soldiers, or martyred 25 soldiers. So since that time, and since 2013, Americans are very much sensitive that as a nuclear weapon state, we are taking the extra regional threat or not carefully, or are we are preparing for a large intercontinental ballistic missile, not to target only India, but target X, Y, Z. So in that context, they are always pressurizing, but I think this report is the IMF or these related reports, they are just, you can say, propaganda or the sort of thing. Neither Pakistan going to hear. If you are going to hear, we had already faced a number of the sanctions. So one shall not be, you can say, worried about it.
Well, just to endorse what Dr. Jaspal has just said, in 2015, our Prime Minister was going to Washington for official visit, and there were insinuations from the US side that our tactical nuclear weapons and long-range missiles will be discussed during the visit. I was the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at that point of time. I was called at midnight to issue a statement that there will be no discussion on our nuclear weapons during the visit. I would also like to add that a few days ago, the Prime Minister had made a statement that there will be no compromise on our nuclear program, and our Finance Minister had also made a similar statement. Thank you.
My name is Mohammad Daud, and I've done my Master's in International Relations from University of Karachi. My question is for Brigadier Agabul. The world is facing severe traditional security threats like environment, climate change, food security, etc. But the problem of Pakistan and India, they are still in the quagmire of traditional apparatus of military and the territorial aspects. The mainly question is why they are not focusing on the cooperation on such issues like climate, on environment, and for the betterment of the society of the both countries of the people.
Basically, it's India's arrogance. This man, Modi, when he came to power, if you compare his statements with the prime ministers of India who were before him, there's a marked difference. He belongs to BJP and he's RSS proponent, 7 times bigger than Pakistan. Pakistan's GDP is about $346 billion. India's GDP is $3.1 trillion. This arrogance does not let them come to table. When he became the prime minister, we were getting ready for the SARC in Islamabad. He declined to come to SARC, and because he declined to come to SARC, all other prime ministers also did not come to Pakistan. So he's sort of treating us with a contempt. Oh, Pakistan is no big thing. So that's why they are not willing to talk. I hope this period will change without unhappy event. And the next prime minister who comes, I hope, will have a better sense. As regards Pakistan, Pakistan keeps bending backwards over and keeps offering, we are ready for talk. It's India which does not want to come to talk. And then there are countries like United States, the hegemon of the world. Whenever there's a mention of Kashmir, they say bilaterally Kashmir be decided. How can a 7 times bigger usurper and aggressor sit down with a 7 times smaller force and say, all right, let's negotiate? It just cannot be done. So this arrogant period of India, I think, will last for a while till a better leadership emerges.
Last question.
Thank you very much. My name is Mohammad Kasalawan. I teach at the Department of International Relations and Assistant Professor. My question is directed at Ambassador Ramzan. You highlighted in your presentations the different sorts of measures that we have taken in the last 50, 60 years, 70 years in order to better our image in the international community. But I personally think that when it comes to hard politics or real politics, usually the soft image or the moral outlook takes the backseat. Whatever you do in the name of making yourself or making your image better, it goes to the backseat when it comes to the real politics. And at the time that we are living in, one of the most profound implications or changes taking place in national identity or international politics is that we are almost on the verge of existential threat, which we are facing. That's the first thing. Second thing is that until and unless we make our own house in order, we cannot blame others for what they are doing, whether they are arrogant or whether they are against Muslim countries. They don't want Muslim countries to acquire weapons and so on and so forth. Look what is happening in Pakistan. In the last 30, 40 or one may count 75 years as well, what the institutions in Pakistan have done to the society or to the state. When I say institutions, it includes both politicians, non-politicians, political forces, non-political forces as well. And look what's going on, what's been happening in the 1.5 years in Pakistan. It's almost like a drama going on. So I personally think when you count traditional and non-traditional security imperatives, one of the biggest dangers that come from Pakistan is from within. Because at a time when we are facing a fragile economy, a fragile political system, so my question is, until and unless you put your own house in order, you cannot expect from the international community to recognize you as a respectable member of the international community. So I would ask for our future generation diplomats who are about to come and who would pass from Foreign Service Academy and who would face the challenges abroad, how would they face the challenges? Keeping in view what's going on in Pakistan and keeping in view the last 75 years vision
we are short of time,
so far.
so
Thank you very much.
Focus on your question.
Was really not a question but a statement. And I can basically agree with what you are saying. I have no difference of opinion with you on that. I agree that no matter how moralistic and legalistic justifications we find to justify our foreign policy goals and objectives, at the end of the day, it is the real politic compulsions that determine the outcomes. And we have been aware of that. We have had to deal with it, and we have tried to deal with it in different ways. One of the ways of ensuring our security is, of course, attaining nuclear deterrence, apart from other things. I can assure you that the foreign policy establishment does not work in a vacuum where there is no recognition of the hard realities of the world. That's the first thing. The second thing, the foreign policy establishment, as a representative of, as a person who served for 37 years in the Foreign Office, Foreign Service, I would endorse what you are saying because it makes our task representing the country abroad very difficult when we have a very weak brief. And that weak brief exists because of the domestic conditions in the country. So it is an extremely difficult task, and all I can say is that we try to do the best we can. But there have been instances where our diplomats at one time are required to praise an incumbent ruler, and once the change takes place in a few weeks' time, we have to go and say, or that this particular ruler was a really bad person. So that's the reality, but that's the reality always the Foreign Office has no control.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. I think the problem in Pakistan is that Pakistani people on leadership positions are brought from outside, and that is why they have no interest in really protecting Pakistan's citizens. I'm not saying everybody is brought from the outside, but most of the people. And a lot of times we've seen for the last few years that compromised people are elevated to leadership positions. Unless we change our political order, I think we will continue to be humiliated at international forums and also within the country. Thank you.
Well, let me thank all the speakers for their valuable views and thoughts. Thank you for being with us. Now we will have a brief ceremony for exchange of souvenirs. After that, we will break for lunch and prayers. Please come back here and be seated by 1400 hours, because you will have to go through a security check while coming here for the next session, because we will have VVIP. So please be seated by 1400 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And I also am very thankful to all the speakers and participants for making this session very interactive. I would request Ambassador Kazi to please present the souvenirs to our worthy speakers. I would request Ambassador Kazi to please present the souvenir to our keynote speaker, Brigadier Agha Ahmed Gul. Next speaker is Ambassador Zamir Akram, retired. It is to please present souvenir to Professor Dr. Zafar Nawaz Respal. Our next speaker, Dr. Shahida Wizarat. EDCS, please present souvenir to Dr. Ansar Parvez. Dr. Shaista Tabassum, Chairperson, Department of International Relations, University of Karachi. Professor Dr. Yasir Ayaz. Brigadier Agha Ahmed Gul would like to present something to Dr. Shaista Tabassum. Thank you so much, Dr. Shaista, Brigadier Gul, and also I'm really thankful to you, EDCS. Thank you so much, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm handing over the podium to Dr. Nausheen Masli, Assistant Professor, Department of International Relations, University of Karachi.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Safia. The department would also like to present shields for our participants as a token of appreciation and remembrance. I would like Dr. Shaista Tabassum to kindly be here. Dr. Naeem, please be on the stage. I would request our keynote speaker, Brigadier Agha Ahmed Gul, to kindly take his seat. Professor Dr. Zafar Nawaz Rispal. But now request Professor Dr. Yasir Ayaz.
चल ठीक है फ्रेडी साहब से ले लेना.
Professor Dr. Shahida Bizarat, kindly receive her shield.
शील्ड भेजे एडी का तो शील्ड भी भेजेगा. शील्ड है वो भी गाड़ी में. सुनो ये क्या कर रहा है? सुनो ये क्या कर रहा है? किसने बुलाया?
Dr. Ansar Parvez.
यूनिवर्सिटी का हो गया.
Now request Executive Director CISSS Azim Khalilullah. Thank you very much. Now there are 3 very special shields for the people who restlessly work to make this conference a success. Usually what David Tehelvi said, मेरे जैसा कोई बुनियाद में काम आता है, घर की तख्ती पे किसी और का नाम आता है. So Dr. Shaista said to give these shields to Haris Ehsan. Mr. Amir Farooqi. And finally, our very dear student and faculty, Dr. Yasir Ali. Thank you all. Thank you very much. As Aji Saab said, we will reassemble here at 1:30. Kindly note that the door will be closed at around 2. The lunch is ready in the dining hall, which is opposite to this auditorium. Thank you very much. On the left side. Thank you very much.